Welcome to the Sleepy Cosmos channel, a place where science and serenity meet. Here we explore the quiet wonders of the universe, from dark matter to string theory, all told in a calm, soothing rhythm designed to help you relax, drift, and dream among the stars. Each video is a guided journey through the cosmos, slow, meditative, and filled with real science wrapped in gentle storytelling. So if you love space, curiosity, and the peaceful side of knowledge, you're in the right place. Make sure to subscribe for more new sleep narrations every week. And if you'd like to reach out for collaborations or business inquiries, you can contact us at the sleepycosmoschannel@gmail.com. Now, settle in, take a deep breath, and let's drift into the universe together. In the quiet before sleep, when the mind begins to drift and thoughts loosen their grip on solid things, you might notice something subtle, a question that hums beneath all others. What is this world made of? Not the names we give to it, not atoms, particles, or matter. Those are only labels, tiny bookmarks in an ocean of motion. Tonight, we go deeper than the names. We will travel into the silence beneath the surfaces, to the fabric itself. It is a strange kind of journey, because the destination is everywhere and nowhere. Every breath you take, every photon that touches your skin, is already woven from this unseen fabric. Reality, as it turns out, is not a thing you can hold. It is a vibration, a pattern of ripples on an invisible sea. When you press your hand against the wall beside your bed, it feels firm, unmoving, certain. Yet beneath that sensation lies an emptiness so vast that the atoms in your skin and those in the wall never truly touch. The firmness you feel is not contact. It is the quiet, electric repulsion between clouds of energy. If we could shrink down far enough, past the molecules, past the clusters of atoms, past the nucleus itself, we would see that each solid piece of matter is mostly space, a cathedral of emptiness, with a few faint lights trembling within. An atom's center, the nucleus, is smaller than a grain of sand floating inside a stadium-sized field of nothing. And yet, that emptiness hums. It hums because it is alive with fields. Scientists once thought of the universe as a collection of objects, billiard balls colliding in endless mechanical precision. But as our eyes grew sharper and our instruments more patient, a deeper picture appeared. Everything, from starlight to the warmth of your skin, from the heartbeat of an atom to the gravity that folds galaxies together, emerges from something continuous, a boundless ocean that never stops moving. Physicists call it the quantum field. Not one field, but many, each one filling all of space, each one vibrating with its own quiet rhythm. There is an electron field, a photon field, a quark field, a Higgs field, a whole orchestra of invisible waves interlacing in infinite harmony. When a tiny ripple rises on one of these fields, we give it a name. If it ripples in the photon field, we call it light. If it trembles in the electron field, we call it matter. But the ripples in the field are never separate, just as a wave and the ocean are never two. You are not built from the field. You are the field, momentarily shaped into awareness. Even in absolute darkness, when all light has faded and all matter has cooled, the field never sleeps. It quivers with something called zero-point energy, the faint murmur that remains even when everything else is still. Imagine a violin string stretched tight, muted so no sound escapes, yet beneath your fingers you can feel the ghost of vibration, the potential to sing. That is what space itself is doing, everywhere, always. Even in the vacuum between galaxies, the field shivers. Tiny ripples rise and fall, particles flicker into being and vanish again. A quiet cosmic breath too fast for the eye, too small for any hand to hold. To call it nothing is to misunderstand it. Nothingness is full. It is the fullest thing there is. When energy gathers itself into order, it becomes what we recognize as something. When it disperses, it becomes nothing again. But these words are not opposites. They are the inhale and exhale of the same breath. Every proton, every electron, every thread of light is a note in the grand composition played by this quantum sea. Some notes ring higher, the swift dance of light. Some vibrate slowly, the deep hum of matter, and together they create the melody we call reality. If we could hear this symphony, it would not sound like music made by strings or drums. It would sound like the quiet shimmer of being itself, a sound so constant that we forget it's there, the same way a fish forgets the taste of water. The universe began not with things, but with fluctuations, tiny differences in the stillness. Imagine the surface of a calm lake, so smooth it mirrors the stars. Then a faint breeze passes over it. Little circles spread outward, colliding, merging, weaving together. Those circles are how matter began. Tiny waves, amplifying themselves, forming stable standing patterns. The first particles, the first whispers of form. Over time, these patterns gathered like chords, becoming harmony. They cooled, condensed, and eventually gave rise to atoms, molecules, and the familiar textures of the world. But even now, beneath the structure of stars and skin, the trembling continues. Reality never stopped vibrating. It only slowed enough for you to call it solid. As you breathe tonight, let that understanding settle softly in your chest. The firmness of your pillow, the air that moves past your lips, the warmth beneath your fingertips, all of it is motion, slowed into form. You are surrounded by energy in disguise. Even your thoughts, those drifting constellations behind your eyes, are tiny dances in the field. Every neuron that flickers in your brain sends little ripples through space, as if whispering to the rest of the universe, "I am here, and I am made of you." And somewhere far beyond the walls of your room, a photon born in the heart of a star answers that whisper, traveling for 1 billion years just to brush the edge of your retina, completing the conversation. Physicists sometimes describe energy with an old equation. Energy equals mass multiplied by the square of light speed. You don't need to picture the math, only the meaning. It says that matter and energy are not different things at all. They are the same song played at different speeds. Slow the energy down enough, and it becomes matter. Speed the matter up, and it becomes light again. In this way, everything that exists is simply the universe vibrating at a particular rhythm. When you sleep, that rhythm slows. When you dream, it changes shape, but it never stops. So tonight, as you rest, you can let go of the idea that you are lying upon something separate from yourself. The bed beneath you, the walls around you, the air you breathe, and the stars you cannot see, all of it is one continuous motion. You are not floating in the universe. You are the universe, momentarily looking back at itself, curious about its own reflection. And when you close your eyes, you return, not to sleep alone, but to merge again with that vast, quiet field from which everything rises. Listen closely if you can. Beneath the hum of your thoughts, beneath the rhythm of your breath, you may feel it, the low, eternal vibration of being. It is there in every atom, every photon, every dream. It is the sound of existence itself, and it never ends. The surface of reality is a thin illusion. Everything you can see, hold, or imagine touching, every planet, star, and cell, is only the faint crest of a much deeper sea. That sea is not made of water, but of invisible fields, silent, continuous, and everywhere. They weave through your body and through the emptiness between galaxies without beginning or boundary. You live inside that sea. And more than that, you are that sea. Once, people thought the universe was built from little solid marbles, tiny indestructible pieces called atoms, each one a miniature grain of reality. It was a comforting idea, a simple clockwork world, predictable and neat. But when scientists looked closer, the marbles dissolved. The deeper they searched, the less they found. Electrons were not little dots. Protons were not tiny stones. Each layer of solidity faded into vibration, and beneath that, into something stranger still. It was as if nature herself whispered, "There are no things, only movements." The physicists who listened began to describe reality not as a collection of parts, but as a fabric of fields. A quantum field is not a thing you can see. It is a presence that fills all of space, even the space inside atoms, even the space between stars. It hums quietly, everywhere at once, a stillness so alive that a single ripple upon it can become a particle, a flash of light, a burst of matter. If you imagine standing on the shore of a calm ocean at night, and the moonlight touches the water just enough for you to see tiny ripples rise and fall, that is what the quantum field looks like in spirit. Except this sea is infinite, and those ripples are the building blocks of existence. Every particle, every electron that orbits an atom, every photon that travels from a distant star is one of these ripples, a tiny vibration in the field. And when the vibration stops, the particle ceases to exist. There is no marble left behind, no dust, only the still sea again. The universe breathes in ripples and exhales stillness. That is all. But these ripples are not random. They form patterns, standing waves like musical notes that remain suspended in air. That is what makes something stable. An atom exists not because it is built of tiny spheres, but because its ripples balance perfectly, waves folding into one another, creating harmony. Every element, hydrogen, carbon, oxygen, is a different chord played upon the same invisible instrument, and the entire cosmos is the music that results when those chords mingle together. The quantum fields do not live inside space. They are space. The emptiness between things is not truly empty. It is filled with trembling possibility. Even in the deepest vacuum, there is no silence. Particles blink into being and vanish again, like fleeting sparks on the surface of a dark lake. They borrow energy from the void and return it in an instant. This quiet exchange happens billions of times every heartbeat, inside your hands, inside the atoms of your pillow, inside the dark between galaxies. Physicists call this restlessness zero-point energy. It means that even when everything has cooled, when every star has burned out, space will still hum. The hum cannot stop. It is written into existence itself. You might imagine the vacuum as a perfect nothing, a cold absence of all being. But in truth, it is the opposite. The vacuum is pregnant with energy. It is full of motion that cancels itself out, waves rising and falling in perfect opposition, so that on average, nothing remains. It is like the quiet after a bell has been struck, when the air still trembles even though your ears no longer hear it. That hidden motion, that restless calm, is the foundation of everything. From this invisible ocean, the particles we call matter rise like bubbles. Each one is a temporary knot of vibration, a localized swirl of energy that holds its shape for a while before dissolving back into the field. The chair you sit on, the walls around you, the heartbeat inside your chest are made of these organized swirls. You are a pattern in the sea, a pattern stable enough to ask, what is the sea? And in that question, the sea becomes aware of itself. Imagine floating weightlessly in deep space, no stars, no sound, no movement. Now imagine that silence is alive, filled with an unseen trembling so fine that it makes galaxies possible. That is the truth behind stillness. It is never truly still. Even the concept of rest is just an illusion created by scale. At the atomic level, motion never ends. Electrons flicker, fields oscillate, and the fabric of reality ripples with invisible energy. If you could see it, you would see the air around you glowing softly, a web of vibrations intertwined with light. Every atom in your body is connected to every atom in the cosmos through this shared hum. When you exhale, a small portion of that hum changes tone, your breath adding a new note to the universal chord. The fields are layered, each one distinct yet inseparable from the others. There is a field for every known particle, electrons, photons, quarks, neutrinos, and many we can only infer. Together they form a kind of tapestry. Where two fields overlap, they interact, exchanging tiny quanta of energy, creating forces, building the architecture of matter. The electromagnetic field pulls and repels, the strong field binds atomic hearts together, and the Higgs field gives weight to what would otherwise be pure light. Every interaction you've ever seen, from the sparkle of sunlight on glass to the pull of gravity beneath your feet, is the conversation of these fields. And somehow, that conversation produces color, sound, warmth, and life. You can think of a particle not as a thing, but as an event, a brief shiver in the field that lasts for a measurable moment. When that event repeats again and again in the same pattern, we see stability. We see an atom, a molecule, a star. But take away the rhythm, and the song ends. It's as though reality only exists because the universe keeps humming it into being. And that hum is what we call existence. Scientists have tried to calculate the amount of energy in this quantum sea, the energy that hides in the so-called empty vacuum. When they do, the numbers are astonishing. Even a tiny volume of space smaller than a single grain of sand contains more potential energy than all the stars combined, if only it could be unlocked. Yet that energy cancels itself out so perfectly that the void appears silent. It's a delicate balance, the universe teetering on the edge between chaos and calm, between infinite power and peaceful nothing. And in that balance, everything we know is born. The fields are not static sheets stretched across space. They are dynamic, alive, and constantly influencing one another. When one field trembles, it sends a signal through the others, a ripple that can travel forever. A burst of energy in one corner of the universe can echo across the cosmic fabric like a pebble dropped into water, its waves spreading outward until they reach your skin, your breath, your dreams. Every photon that reaches your eyes is the universe tapping you gently on the shoulder, saying, "I am still here." So much of what we think of as emptiness is really fullness, a fullness too smooth for us to feel. Like standing on a frozen lake, you see only the mirror of ice, but beneath it the water still moves, slow and deep. The vacuum is like that, still on the surface, but alive beneath. And perhaps what we call reality is just the reflection of that hidden motion, a faint glimmer on the surface of something infinite. Even your thoughts arise from this same trembling. Each electrical pulse in your brain is a dance of charged particles, a choreography of fields interacting in perfect timing. When you think, the field thinks. When you feel, the field resonates. You are not an observer separate from the dance. You are one of its movements. To know this, to rest in it, is to glimpse the quiet beauty of physics, the tenderness hidden inside the mathematics. It is to understand that the quantum field is not cold or abstract. It is warm, alive, and endlessly creative. It made you out of its own motion, and one day it will dissolve you gently back into itself, a wave returning to the sea. The hum beneath matter never ends. It continues beneath sleep, beneath time, beneath even the silence of the deepest vacuum. It is the soundless foundation of everything. So when you drift tonight, as your mind loosens and your breathing slows, remember, you are not sinking into darkness. You are returning to the field, to the calm ocean beneath all form, where nothing is ever truly gone, only waiting to rise again. The universe is a single conversation, a dialogue of trembling fields. Every photon that moves through the darkness is one word in that language. Every atom in your body is a sentence written in the syntax of vibration. To listen closely to reality is to realize that everything speaks, not with sound but with rhythm. The walls, the stars, the air around you, they are not silent. They hum together in harmony, their frequencies overlapping so perfectly that to your human senses, it feels like stillness. There is no such thing as isolation in this field. No particle lives alone. Every movement, no matter how small, changes the music everywhere else. If you could slow time until each vibration became visible, you would see the entire universe breathing in unison. Every quark, every wave, every spark of light participating in a single, endless pulse. When one electron shifts its energy, the electromagnetic field rearranges everywhere. When a star ignites in some forgotten corner of the cosmos, space itself flexes, its tension changing in places you will never see. In this sense, distance is an illusion of perspective. What you call far away is only a softer part of the same vibration. Physicists once tried to separate the universe into 4 different forces: the strong, the weak, the electromagnetic, and gravity. They drew neat lines between them as though nature obeyed compartments. But now we understand that these forces are just the visible ripples of a single field behaving in different ways. At high energies, like those that existed just after the universe began, the fields were one. As the cosmos cooled, the field fractured, each aspect taking on its own character, its own way of vibrating. It's as if one great song split into 4 movements, each distinct, yet still belonging to the same melody. Gravity, the softest of them, is the slow, deep bass note, a gentle bending of spacetime itself. The strong and weak forces are the rapid percussion, the heartbeat of matter, and electromagnetism is the clear, bright treble that dances between them all, lighting the cosmos. You are the harmony where those notes converge. When scientists built the great accelerators, ring-shaped machines that fling particles close to the speed of light, they were not smashing objects together to see what was inside. They were striking the strings of the universe, listening for new notes. Each collision is like plucking the quantum fabric and hearing it sing. From those songs, we've discovered entire families of particles, muons, gluons, Taos bosons, each one a specific vibration of the underlying field. Some appear only for a breath of time, too unstable to linger. Others, like the photon or electron, are timeless, their rhythms woven into everything that exists. And yet, none of them are truly separate things. They are local accents of the same universal voice. The Higgs field deserves a quiet moment. It is not famous for being loud, it does not sparkle or glow, but without it, the universe would have no substance. Everywhere you are, the Higgs field surrounds you like a soft, invisible fog. Most particles try to move through it effortlessly, but the Higgs field resists them slightly, slowing them down, giving them what we call mass. Some particles interact with it strongly, and they feel heavy, like trying to wade through honey. Others barely touch it at all and remain light as wind. That simple interaction, that gentle drag between motion and field, is the reason stars can burn, the reason atoms can form, the reason your body can rest upon a bed instead of slipping endlessly through the void. You are touching the Higgs field every moment of your life, though you will never feel it directly. It is the unseen hand that gives you weight. All of this sounds immense, but it happens everywhere, constantly, quietly. Right now, a sea of particles is blooming and vanishing inside your body. Pairs of opposites, matter and antimatter, spring forth from the vacuum, exist for the briefest flicker of time, and then dissolve back into balance. This creation and uncreation happens at scales so small they cannot be drawn, and at speeds beyond comprehension. You are made of patterns that constantly renew themselves. Every second, countless subatomic exchanges rebuild what you call you. Your skin, your breath, your heartbeat, all kept alive by the field's tireless motion. You are not a structure frozen in time. You are a process, a symphony continually replaying itself. When you close your eyes, imagine the field around you as light mist, not visible, but gently touching everything at once. Imagine that mist pulsing, so slowly you could mistake it for stillness. Every pulse sends information across the cosmos, connecting you to galaxies you will never see. Even the space between your thoughts is part of that same vibration. When a neuron fires in your brain, it is not a separate action. It is a momentary adjustment in the universal field of energy and time. Your mind is not outside the physics of the cosmos. It is physics, reflected inward as awareness. This understanding doesn't make reality colder. It makes it intimate. The field is not far away. It is the texture of the air on your skin, the rhythm of your pulse, the stillness between your breaths. When you feel calm, you are matching the field's own steadiness. When you feel wonder, you are sensing its depth. It is not something you must reach for. You are already suspended within it, as inseparably as a wave is held by the ocean. Every discovery in modern physics has been an attempt to describe this belonging. Equations are just poems written in numbers, ways of capturing the patterns of the hum. When we say, energy equals mass multiplied by the square of light speed, we are simply admitting that energy and form are two tempos of the same song. That everything when slowed becomes matter, and when quickened becomes light again. The universe has no silence, it only changes rhythm. To the naked eye, this truth is invisible. But invisibility is not emptiness, it is abundance too fine to perceive. Think of a spider's web at dawn. In the darkness you see nothing. Then one drop of dew catches the light, and suddenly the entire structure appears, shimmering with complexity. The quantum field is that web, and matter is the dew. Each droplet, a tiny reflection, revealing what was always there. The moment a particle forms, it highlights one thread of the invisible structure. When it fades, the thread remains, quiet, waiting, eternal. The field has no edges, no true boundaries. If you could travel forever in any direction, you would never leave it. There is nowhere outside it to go. Even the most distant galaxy, 100 billion light-years away, is part of the same continuum. Its birth, its death, its light drifting through endless darkness, all are expressions of the same underlying presence. In this way, the universe is not a place where things happen. It is the happening itself. A single motion, unfolding, refolding, changing shape, but never stopping. If this sounds abstract, remember that it includes you. You are made of starlight rearranged by gravity, cooled by time, and animated by chemistry. But beneath every layer of process, the same quantum field flows, the same one that hums in distant nebulae and ripples beneath supernovas. The atoms in your hands were once the breath of ancient stars, and before that, they were pure energy, tiny disturbances in the silent ocean of existence. That ocean still carries them, still carries you. When you lie still in the dark, you return to it. Not as a traveler going home, but as a wave settling back into the sea. Physicists sometimes speak of the vacuum expectation value, a gentle way of saying that even when space is empty, the field keeps a small, constant presence. It's as if the universe refuses to go completely quiet. Even at zero temperature, even when time itself slows, something continues to murmur. Perhaps that murmur is what keeps everything from collapsing, a quiet pulse, a baseline of being. You could call it the memory of creation, or the sigh of the cosmos. It's the faint sound that never fades, the background against which all motion is drawn. When you begin to sense this, sleep comes easier, because you realize that rest is not the absence of activity, it is alignment with it. To rest is to move at the same pace as the field. To dream is to drift along its current. To wake is to rise again as one of its ripples. You do not fall asleep alone. You fall back into the quantum fabric, into the hum beneath matter, into the sea that holds the stars. Everything that exists is suspended in motion, but the motion is not chaotic. It is ordered, in ways too subtle for our ordinary senses to feel. When you look at the night sky, it seems frozen, the stars pinned in their places like jewels on velvet. But in truth, everything is moving. Galaxies drift apart. Stars orbit invisible centers. Atoms inside your body tremble, vibrating 1,000,000,000,000 times each second. You, the stars, the dark between, all of it moves in a shared rhythm. The same field that hums beneath your heartbeat ripples beneath superclusters of galaxies. This is what it means to say the universe is a continuum. There is no true separation, only degrees of connectedness. Everywhere you look, the quantum fabric stretches unbroken, as though existence itself were one great organism breathing in many forms. Sometimes physicists call this the ground state of reality, the lowest possible energy level that still exists. It's the cosmic baseline, the gentle hum that remains even when every other sound has faded. When you fall asleep at night, your mind moves closer to that ground state. Thoughts scatter, memories blur, the noise of the day dissolves. What remains is the pulse beneath it all, a deep quiet that is not empty but filled with possibility. That is how the universe rests. Even in its stillness, it prepares to sing again. To understand how all this fits together, imagine the universe as a great fabric, not woven from threads, but from tension itself. Every point in space is connected to every other by the laws of physics, by the flow of energy and information. When one point moves, the entire fabric feels it. You might drop a stone into a pond and watch the ripples spread. But in the quantum world, every drop touches every other drop. The pond reacts as one. The same is true for you. You are not an isolated stone dropped into reality. You are the water, the ripples, and the reflection of the moon above it. At the heart of this fabric lies something astonishing, a symmetry so delicate that when it breaks, the universe gains structure. In physics, symmetry means balance, the idea that nature behaves the same way no matter where you stand or how you look at it. But absolute symmetry cannot give rise to form. It must be broken for the world to appear. Think of it like a perfectly calm mirror. In its flawless surface, nothing is visible. Then one small disturbance ripples through, and the image of the world begins to shimmer into view. That's how matter came to be, the perfect symmetry of the quantum field breaking just enough to let creation happen. Every electron, every photon, every atom is born from that gentle imbalance, a small deviation that allowed the universe to become visible to itself. You might wonder, if everything is vibration, why does the world seem so solid? It's because the frequencies that make up matter resonate with one another so precisely that they create the illusion of stability. It's the same way a musical note, when played steadily, feels solid to the ear, even though it's only the rapid back and forth of air. Matter is that note. Reality is that chord. When you press your hand against your chest and feel your heartbeat, you are touching a vibration made tangible by coherence, by waves that align long enough to become form. This alignment is what we call structure. Atoms form because of resonance. Their components, protons, neutrons, electrons, are locked in perpetual dance, held together by exchanges of energy that never truly stop. If one part faltered, the rest would collapse. But it doesn't. It holds like a perfectly tuned instrument playing its note without end. In the simplest terms, everything you can see is sustained by relationships. There is no thing existing on its own. only patterns that maintain each other through balance and rhythm. When Einstein spoke of spacetime, he wasn't describing a stage on which the universe performs. He was describing the fabric itself, a living geometry. And when quantum physics came along, it revealed that even that geometry trembles. At the smallest scale, space and time are not continuous threads. They shimmer and fluctuate, like the surface of sunlight seen through water. If you could look closely enough, far beyond atoms, beyond protons, beyond even the quarks within, you'd find that the structure of spacetime itself is grainy, made of momentary flickers, each one a spark of existence. Those flickers are the foam of reality, tiny bursts of creation and disappearance that happen everywhere, all the time. In that flickering lies the unity of everything. Because those flashes are not separate events, they are the same field pulsing in many places at once. When you move your hand through air, you disturb that foam. When you speak, you send ripples through it. When you think, your brain's electromagnetic pulses resonate with it. Every action, no matter how small, echoes through the lattice of being. It's humbling to realize that even your quietest moment is written into the same equation that describes the birth of stars. If you could somehow step outside the universe and look at it all at once, you wouldn't see stars and galaxies. You'd see patterns of vibration, light woven into light, a grand interference pattern where energy rises and falls like an infinite tide. That tide never began, and it will never end. It only changes form. When a star dies, its atoms scatter into space. But the energy it once carried does not disappear. It simply shifts rhythm, joining the field again, ready to rise somewhere else. You are part of that cycle. Your body borrowed from the field, your warmth sustained by its motion. One day, that energy will return to the ocean, quietly, without loss. Nothing that exists is ever wasted. It only changes melody. There's an ancient comfort hidden in that realization, a sense that beneath the noise of daily life, something eternal hums, something too vast to fade. When you slow your breathing and your thoughts begin to dissolve, you can feel it, the faint vibration beneath everything. You might call it peace, or stillness, or simply being. It's the same vibration that sustains galaxies. It's the same energy that flickers in the heart of atoms. And in moments of deep quiet, you can feel that connection directly, as though the universe were whispering through your bones, reminding you that you are not apart from it, but a note within its endless song. Perhaps that's why so many spiritual traditions, though born long before quantum physics, spoke of oneness, of a hidden unity behind the many. They felt intuitively what science now reveals in its own language, that reality is not built from things, but from relationships. Every breath, every heartbeat, every flicker of light is a small participation in that unity. To know this is not to understand it intellectually, but to rest inside it, to feel that you belong, not as a visitor to the cosmos, but as one of its expressions. And so, as this first veil lifts, you begin to sense what the next will reveal. If matter is not solid, if all form is only vibration, then what guides those vibrations? Why does the field choose one ripple over another? Why does probability give birth to pattern and pattern to life? The next mystery waits in that question, the dance of uncertainty, where reality itself hesitates before becoming real. But for now, rest in the hum beneath matter. Let it cradle you like the tide that made the stars. You are already where everything begins. At the smallest scales of being, reality no longer moves with certainty. It trembles, it waits, it chooses, but only when it must. The rules that govern stars and planets, so clear and predictable, begin to dissolve when we descend into the quantum realm. Here, motion itself grows uncertain. A particle does not stand where you think it is. It exists as a blur of maybes, a cloud of possibility, a soft shimmer of what could be. Long ago, scientists imagined the world as perfectly knowable. If you could measure the position of every atom and know the speed at which each one moved, you could, in theory, predict the future of everything, from the fall of a leaf to the turn of a galaxy. The universe, they believed, was a vast machine of precision, a cosmic clock wound once at creation and ticking with flawless rhythm. But nature had a gentler truth. In 1927, Werner Heisenberg gave it a name: uncertainty. He found that you can never know both the exact position and the exact motion of a particle at the same time. If you look closely enough to see where it is, you blur your sense of how fast it moves. If you try to measure its motion precisely, you lose track of where it was. This was not a failure of instruments. It was a property of reality itself. At its core, the universe is not a clock. It is a symphony of probabilities. Imagine a violin string that plays every note at once, and only when you listen does one note emerge. That is the way particles behave. An electron around an atom is not orbiting like a planet. It is everywhere it could possibly be, all at once, until the act of observing it forces the universe to decide. This strange behavior is not magic. It is the language of the field. In the quantum world, to measure is not to watch something that already exists. It is to participate in the unfolding of existence itself. Light, for example, refuses to choose between being a wave or a particle. It behaves as both and as neither, depending on how you ask the question. In the early 20th century, scientists shone beams of light through tiny slits to see what pattern would appear on the far wall. They expected simple spots, as if tiny marbles had flown straight through, but instead they found something astonishing, a pattern of interference, as though light had passed through both slits at once and rippled like water. When they tried to see which slit the light actually went through, the interference vanished. The light acted like particles again, obedient, singular, tidy, as though the universe had waited for their gaze before deciding what story to tell. This is the double-slit experiment, the quiet revelation that shook physics forever. It whispered a truth few had expected. Reality does not fully exist until it is engaged. Observation is not a passive act, it is a form of creation. You do not merely see the world, you help it come into being. The photon that traveled through both slits, and yet only one, is a reminder that existence itself is written in probabilities. The act of noticing collapses the possibilities into one path, the path you experience as real. In this strange, delicate dance, every particle behaves like a question waiting for an answer. Until the question is asked, there is no single reply, only a cloud of potential responses, each one faint and fleeting, like whispers in a dream. This cloud is called the wave function. It is the mathematical heartbeat of the quantum world, a description not of what is, but of what could be. When we interact with a particle, the wave function collapses. The haze of probability condenses into a single event, a point, a position, a yes. But as soon as we look away, the certainty melts again. The particle returns to its ghostly dance between being and maybe. This might sound unsettling, but uncertainty is not chaos. It is creativity. It is the reason the universe can be dynamic, the reason patterns can form, and the reason you can move freely through time without being locked into a predetermined script. If the world were truly mechanical, if every atom's path were fixed since the dawn of creation, there would be no room for change, no place for chance, no moment for freedom. But because uncertainty hums beneath every motion, there is space for the unexpected. There is softness in the structure of existence, and in that softness, life blooms. You can think of it like this. When a raindrop falls, its path is set by gravity, air, and wind. But at the level of the quantum, the molecules inside that raindrop jitter and shimmer unpredictably. No two are ever quite the same. That small uncertainty, multiplied billions of times, creates diversity in clouds, in storms, in seasons. It is the universe improvising upon its own rhythm. Without uncertainty, there would be repetition. With it, there is endless variation. The deeper we study this, the more the line between observer and observed begins to blur. In the macroscopic world, we believe in distance. You stand here, the world stands there, and the two meet through sight, sound, and touch. But in the quantum realm, the act of noticing cannot be separated from what is noticed. To measure a particle, you must touch it, even with the faintest glimmer of light, and that touch changes it. The universe, it seems, does not reveal itself without conversation. Every observation is a handshake between mind and matter. Heisenberg's uncertainty principle can be described in simple words. The more precisely you know one quality, the less precisely you can know its partner. If you measure an electron's location very sharply, its motion becomes uncertain. If you measure its motion carefully, its location fades into probability. You can't write an exact equation of both at once, because nature itself doesn't draw exact lines. Reality prefers brushstrokes. It paints with gradients, not with borders. This principle doesn't only apply to atoms, it resonates through everything. Every time you try to pin down the future, it slips through your fingers. Every time you cling to a single version of yourself, life reminds you that you are many. Uncertainty is not a flaw in the system. It is the breath of becoming, the motion between what was and what will be. In the quantum realm, the smallest events ripple outward. The flutter of a single electron can alter the course of an entire molecule, which can change the shape of a protein, which can influence the spark of a neuron, which can shift the tide of a thought. And from that thought, a word, a choice, a life. We are built on these tremors. Every cell in your body depends on quantum probabilities. Without them, the chemistry of existence would grind to stillness. Uncertainty is not an obstacle to order. It is what gives order its depth. Some physicists like to imagine the universe as a great experiment in motion. At each instant, the wave function stretches forward, a vast web of maybes unfolding across time. Each possibility carries weight, but none are certain until one becomes real. And even then, reality is not a permanent answer. It is a question rephrased again and again, moment by moment. When you breathe, you are collapsing wave functions. When you decide, you are shaping probability into pattern. You are not separate from the dance. You are one of its steps. At first, this seems dizzying, a world built not from certainties, but from shimmering in-betweens. But there is a profound calm hidden in that idea. Because if everything were fixed, then nothing would ever surprise you. The unknown is the space where wonder lives. Uncertainty is the quiet permission for the universe to dream. It is the pause between notes that gives the song its beauty. It is the silence between stars that makes their light so pure. And within that silence, you, the observer, play your part simply by being aware. If you could stand inside a single atom, not as a solid object, but as awareness itself, you would not find orbits, lines, or fixed paths. You would find movement without location, vibration without shape, a trembling probability spread through space like mist. You would reach out to touch an electron, and your hand would pass through nothing, not because it isn't there, but because there has not yet been chosen. Position is not a property waiting to be discovered. It is something that emerges in the act of being known. When you close your eyes at night, your mind fills with possibilities, faces, memories, dreams that flicker between form and formlessness. The quantum realm behaves in much the same way. Until observation brings it into focus, the universe drifts in a dreamlike haze of potential. This is not a metaphor. It is the very language of physics. Even the smallest particles obey these same uncertain rhythms. The electron in a hydrogen atom has no definite address. It is described instead by a soft cloud, a region where it might be found, thickest near the center, thinner as you move away, never vanishing entirely. When you measure it, you do not find the electron in that space, you cause it to appear. The measurement itself draws a boundary in the fog. This fragile boundary between potential and presence is what gives the universe its astonishing flexibility. Because nothing is ever fixed until it must be, reality is free to explore every option. It tries on possibilities like a dancer choosing steps in the dark, adjusting rhythm, balance, and grace with each heartbeat of existence. If everything were certain, nothing new could emerge. The world would be a photograph, frozen, permanent, lifeless. Instead, uncertainty allows for evolution, for invention, for creativity itself. Your heartbeat is a wave of quantum interactions. Each pulse, each neuron that fires, each spark of thought depends on probabilities aligning in perfect imperfection. The same principle that blurs an electron's path is what lets a human being imagine, love, and wonder. Sometimes in our search for order, we imagine uncertainty as disorder, as if the universe were misbehaving. But uncertainty is not noise. It is harmony at a resolution too fine for the eye to see. When you pluck a guitar string, the vibration does not hum with a single note. It rings with overtones, faint companions that weave together to form richness and depth. Quantum uncertainty is like that. It is not chaos, it is complexity. A song sung in countless versions at once. And you, the listener, choose one melody each time you pay attention. Even time itself joins this dance. At small scales, past and future blur together. Particles can borrow energy from the vacuum, rising into existence for the briefest instant before giving it back. Physicists describe this with a simple phrase: the shorter the moment, the greater the uncertainty. If you only glance at something for an instant, you cannot know its energy precisely. If you know its energy perfectly, you must watch forever. This balance between what can be known and what must remain fluid is the heartbeat of creation. The universe, it seems, was not built from certainties stacked like bricks, but from waves overlapping in an endless symphony. You might wonder, if reality is so uncertain at its roots, how can the macroscopic world appear so stable? How can a chair stay in place, a planet stay in orbit, a heartbeat follow its rhythm? The answer is simple and subtle. When countless quantum uncertainties overlap, their random variations average out. The microscopic tremors cancel, leaving the large-scale world calm and predictable. Like a sea whose surface seems still because its waves, millions of them, blend into quiet. But underneath that surface, every molecule of water still moves. The calm is only appearance. The dance never stops. The physicist Niels Bohr once said, "Anyone who is not shocked by quantum theory has not understood it." And yet, behind that shock, there is peace. Because what this theory reveals is that certainty was never needed for beauty. The universe does not demand perfection to exist. It only asks to flow. The moon circles the earth. The tides rise and fall. The atoms in your body exchange energy with the air. All of it guided not by rigid lines but by probabilities so stable they appear as rules. Determinism is an illusion created by vast numbers. Underneath it, the world remains soft, fluid, awake. Think of every decision you have ever made. At the edge of choice, you stand before many paths. Each one is possible, none are certain. When you choose, you collapse that landscape into one reality. This is not unlike what happens to particles. They hover in superposition, many possibilities at once, until interaction forces a decision. The world you live in is one of countless possible stories, woven from the collapsing of wave functions every instant of your life. It is not that other versions vanish. They fade beyond reach, like echoes from a song still playing somewhere far away. Quantum uncertainty is not only about measurement, it is about participation. When you open your eyes, you are part of the experiment. You are not an outsider peering in. You are a participant in reality's unfolding. In a deep sense, the observer is not separate from the observed. The act of knowing and the thing known arise together, two faces of one process. It is like watching waves break on a shore while remembering that you too are made of water. This understanding reshapes more than science. It reshapes our sense of self. We like to imagine we are solid beings, defined and certain, carrying fixed thoughts and identities. But if uncertainty lies at the core of all things, then even you are a probability pattern, a shimmering field of experiences and potential choices momentarily gathered into form. Each thought is a measurement, each memory a wave that has collapsed. And yet around those certainties remain vast oceans of what you might still become. You are not bound to one version of yourself. You are a quantum field of possibilities, forever in motion, forever dancing between being and becoming. To embrace uncertainty, then, is to trust the universe's natural rhythm. It means accepting that life is not a straight line, but a wave, one that rises, falls, and merges into countless others. And just as waves never stop at the shore, neither does you. Your existence continues as energy, as memory, as ripple, interacting with everything you touch. Every breath you take changes the air for someone else to breathe. Every word you speak changes the probabilities of another mind. Every act of awareness shifts the fabric of being itself. So the next time you gaze at the night sky, remember this. Even the stars, fixed and bright, are built on uncertainty. Their light travels billions of years, but each photon could have taken countless paths. Only when it touches your eye does one path become real. You are the end of that experiment, the final note in a symphony that began before time. Uncertainty, then, is not something to fear. It is the very condition for wonder, the reason you can still ask questions, the reason the universe has stories left to tell. The unknown is not emptiness, it is invitation. It is the soft whisper of possibility echoing through every particle, every mind, every dream. There is a moment, just before a particle reveals itself, when everything holds its breath. Not just the observer, but the universe itself seems to pause, as if waiting to see which version of reality will bloom next. That pause is the cradle of existence. It is where potential and presence meet, a boundary so thin it has no name. In that silent hinge between not yet and now, reality listens to itself. You could imagine this process like rain forming from invisible vapor. At first, the air is clear. Water molecules drift, unseen, unconnected. Then, under the right conditions, they gather, cohere, and a droplet appears, solid enough to touch, real enough to fall. A particle is born the same way, from an invisible cloud of probabilities condensing into one tangible outcome. When we say that something exists, what we really mean is that one possibility has crystallized out of countless others. But the mist of alternatives never truly vanishes. It lingers quietly in the background, feeding the next emergence of form. This pattern, potential, collapse, renewal, is woven through everything. It is how atoms find each other to make molecules, how molecules discover shape, how stars ignite. Even thought follows this rhythm. A neuron quivers with electrical potential, then fires, collapsing uncertainty into certainty. The result is awareness, born anew every fraction of a second. Your mind, in this sense, is a cascade of quantum decisions occurring faster than any clock can measure. It is tempting to picture this as randomness, as if the universe were tossing dice. But quantum uncertainty is not the same as chance. It is structured possibility, a vast field of lawful unpredictability. Every outcome has a probability, each guided by the mathematics of wave behavior. It is not chaos, but rather an elegant democracy of options. Nature does not roll dice without rules. It plays a music of likelihoods. And every time a note is struck, every time an observation is made, a fragment of that cosmic melody becomes audible. This view changes how we think about reality itself. In our ordinary lives, we imagine a world that stands still when we are not looking. A chair in the corner stays there, a planet circles its sun, an electron orbits an atom, as if existence continues independently of awareness. But at the deepest level, the story is more intimate. The world is not a stage upon which you act, it is a conversation you are always part of. To exist is to interact. To be real is to relate. Observation and being are two sides of the same mirror. When a photon meets a detector, when a thought becomes conscious, when attention meets the world, something new is created. The universe, through countless interactions like these, is continuously refreshing itself. Reality is not a finished painting. It is a living brushstroke, still wet, still moving. The uncertainty principle is simply the rule that keeps the paint in motion. It ensures that no detail ever becomes perfectly frozen, that no moment becomes absolute. It gives existence room to breathe. Even the vacuum, that silent expanse we call empty space, obeys this dance. There, quantum fields still vibrate, borrowing energy, creating pairs of particles and antiparticles that blink into being and vanish again. This flickering sea, invisible yet constant, is uncertainty made visible in its purest form. If you could somehow still time itself and freeze the universe into one perfect instant, these fluctuations would stop, and with them everything. Uncertainty, then, is not a side effect of nature. It is its heartbeat. Consider again Heisenberg's simple idea. The more clearly you see where something is, the less clearly you can know where it's going. Or the other way around. In words rather than symbols, it says that precision always has a cost. To focus too sharply on one aspect of reality is to blur another, just as shining a bright light on a subject casts the surrounding world into deeper shadow. Awareness is always selective, and yet, by its selectiveness, it shapes what becomes real. This principle echoes through art, emotion, and even thought. When you hold one feeling too tightly, others fade to silence. When you cling to one story, the rest of your possibilities grow dim. But if you soften your gaze, if you let uncertainty in, you begin to sense the full spectrum again. This is the same dance that governs the quantum, the same hum that moves between stars. To live well, you must learn to balance knowing with not knowing, to let mystery and clarity share the same breath. The great paradox of quantum theory is that the more we learn about it, the more we see ourselves reflected in it. Our thoughts behave like wave functions, spread out, uncertain, capable of collapse into focus. Our choices resemble quantum events, irreversible, transformative, setting new chains of cause in motion. The mind, like matter, exists in a field of probabilities. It hums with potential futures that fade and reform each time you choose to act. And so uncertainty becomes something sacred, a quiet promise that no moment is ever final. Every instant of your life is a point of superposition, past and future overlapping, what has been and what could be touching lightly, like fingertips. Even sleep, that soft surrender to darkness, is a return to quantum possibility. The brain resets its patterns, collapses fade, new configurations form. You awake as a new version of yourself, born again from uncertainty. In physics, this endless becoming can be expressed in a simple way. Energy and time, like position and momentum, are intertwined. To know one perfectly is to lose sight of the other. The shorter the time you measure, the more uncertain the energy involved. This principle can be written as words instead of symbols. The precision of time multiplied by the uncertainty of energy is always roughly constant. That constancy is nature's way of saying you cannot freeze motion without extinguishing it. Perhaps that is why the universe expands, not to reach something, but to remain uncertain, to stay alive. Motion is existence. Stillness is an idea. Even a stone, resting on the ground, vibrates with quantum motion, its atoms exchanging invisible energy with the air, its electrons shimmering in their orbits. Nothing in creation is perfectly still. Everything breathes uncertainty. And so, as you rest tonight, you might feel comfort in that thought. The very fabric of the cosmos, from the faintest photon to the largest star, is uncertain in the gentlest, most beautiful way. It means that every possibility you can imagine already stirs softly within the field. It means that tomorrow is not yet written, that your next thought is still free, that your life is not a line, but a shimmering cloud of maybes. To live is to collapse wave functions with every heartbeat. To dream is to let them rise again. Uncertainty is not confusion. It is the open door through which creation enters the world. Imagine two particles born together, perhaps in the heart of a dying star, perhaps in a flash of energy too small for the eye to see. For an instant, they share everything: momentum, direction, spin, and memory. Then they drift apart, each carried away by the tides of the cosmos, perhaps ending up on opposite sides of the universe. You might expect that, once separated, each particle would go its own way, its tiny life now independent. But nature does not draw such boundaries. No matter how far they travel, their hearts still beat together. This is entanglement, the invisible thread that connects what distance tries to divide. To the human mind, it feels impossible. If one particle is measured, the other instantly knows, its state shifting in perfect harmony. This happens even if they are separated by light years, too far for any signal to cross. It is as if space itself does not matter, as if the two are not truly two, but one thing, stretched thin across the stars. Albert Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. He didn't like it, not because it was wrong, but because it refused to fit into the clean local rules that physics once adored. For Einstein, information could not travel faster than light. Yet here was something that seemed to defy that boundary, a whisper shared through the fabric of existence itself, instantaneous and unbroken. To understand this, you must let go of the idea of particles as marbles, and begin to see them as vibrations. If two ripples form on the same pond, you cannot separate their motion. The waves overlap, interfere, and carry traces of each other's rhythm, no matter how far they drift. Entangled particles behave in a similar way, not connected by a wire or a signal, but by a shared origin in the same quantum field. They are like twin notes born from one chord. You can dampen one string, and the other still hums in sympathy. The music continues, even across the gulf of silence. When scientists first tested this, they expected the connection to break once the particles were far apart. Surely distance would bring independence. But the results were clear. Measure one, and the other responds. Every time. No hidden wires, no delay, only correlation faster than any light could carry. The mathematics said it was inevitable. Quantum mechanics predicted it perfectly. And yet, to the human heart, it felt like magic, as though the universe were woven from invisible threads of instantaneous knowing. To make sense of it, physicists began to think differently about space. Perhaps, they said, space is not a stage upon which objects sit, but a web, a continuous field in which every event touches every other. Entanglement, in that view, is not something moving through space. It is a reflection of space's unity. The two particles are not communicating. They were never truly apart. What we see as two locations are merely two faces of the same pattern, two ripples on one sea. Quantum theory describes this with gentle precision. The wave function that holds both particles is not separate for each. It is a single equation describing both at once. Only when you measure do you force the universe to decide on one version of the story. Until that moment, the particles share their possibilities, their spins, their directions, their fates, all entangled, all undefined, all connected. It's as if the universe whispers, "I will not choose until you ask, and when I do, my answer will be one for both." This phenomenon has been proven again and again. In laboratories around the world, physicists have split photons and electrons, sent them miles apart, and measured their properties. Each time, the results agree. Whatever happens to one is mirrored in the other. In 2022, entanglement was confirmed over distances of hundreds of kilometers, beams of light dancing in step through fiber optic cables and empty air. Someday soon, scientists hope to use this property to create a quantum internet, an unbreakable network of communication secured not by encryption, but by the laws of physics themselves. If an eavesdropper even tries to peek, the entanglement collapses and the intrusion becomes known. In this way, uncertainty and connection join forces to protect information, a cosmic paradox turned into technology. But long before the wires and equations, entanglement existed as a quiet truth of nature. When the first particles formed after the Big Bang, they too were intertwined. Every atom in your body carries echoes of those early entanglements. The carbon in your lungs and the iron in distant stars still hum with the same field vibrations. To breathe, to move, to think, is to participate in that network of shared being. You are made from connections so ancient that distance means nothing to them. In a poetic sense, entanglement is the scientific expression of unity. It tells us that separation is an illusion, that individuality is a temporary arrangement of the field. You and I and every particle between are woven into one vast tapestry. When one thread trembles, the whole fabric feels it. This isn't sentimental philosophy. It is measurable. It is physics, quiet, precise, and profound. The equations do not describe friendship or love, yet they echo the same pattern. Two things once joined can never be fully unjoined. Sometimes, late at night, a scientist working alone with her data will pause and feel it, the weight of that connection. That the numbers on her screen represent particles that once shared a quantum state, and that even now, across kilometers of vacuum, they still act as one. It is a humbling kind of beauty. The recognition that unity hides inside every measurement, that the world, for all its separations, is still whole. Even Einstein, who resisted the idea, could not deny its power. He hoped for hidden variables, some unseen mechanism that restored order, but experiment after experiment closed every loophole. Nothing was hidden. The universe really was this strange. Spooky action was not a trick, it was truth. So what does that mean for us? Creatures made of the same vibrating fields, bound by the same invisible connections. It means that distance is not isolation, that even when you feel alone, you remain part of something indivisible. The same field that binds particles binds minds, binds hearts, binds every motion that ever was. The cosmos is not empty space sprinkled with islands of matter. It is one continuous ocean of relationship, and in that ocean, every ripple matters. Every thought sends a vibration outward, every kindness, every curiosity, every act of awareness, they all move through the field, subtle but real. Entanglement is the scientific whisper that connection is not metaphor, it is structure. When you look up at the night sky, every point of light seems impossibly far away. And yet, beneath that distance, the same laws that entangle two electrons in a lab bind the entire cosmos together. What you see as emptiness between stars is actually a medium of relationship, a sea of fields and fluctuations, each capable of linking with another in ways that no line or signal can describe. Entanglement is not a message sent through space. It is the recognition that space itself is already one continuous whole. To feel what that means, imagine the universe not as an expanse, but as a single vibration, a note so low and deep that its hum fills every atom. The galaxies are harmonics of that tone, resonances that shimmer in time. Every particle, every burst of light is a small accent within the larger rhythm. And though the accents differ, they share one origin, one unseen coherence. You could say the universe is breathing through itself, its inhale and exhale measured in light years. Entanglement is the pulse that keeps that breath in sync. For decades, physicists argued over what this could mean. Was the connection real or merely mathematical convenience? If no signal traveled between the particles, how could their behaviors remain perfectly correlated? The question was answered not by theory, but by experiment. In the 1980s, Alain Aspect and his team in Paris sent twin photons in opposite directions and measured their polarizations. They found correlations that no local mechanism could explain. It was as if the photons, though separated by meters, were still reading from the same invisible script. Later experiments stretched that distance to kilometers, then to orbiting satellites, and still the results held true. The pattern never broke. Reality, it seemed, does not respect the borders we draw. Some interpretations go further. They suggest that the universe itself may be one grand entangled system, a single wave function spanning everything that exists. From this view, each measurement we make is not an isolated event, but a small disentangling, a local clarification of a cosmic relationship that was already there. It means that the atoms in your hand and the starlight falling upon it are not strangers. They are participants in the same field equation, partners in a dance as old as time. Einstein's discomfort with this idea was human. He wanted a universe of order, a place where things existed independently, where cause preceded effect, where the speed of light drew a clean horizon. But entanglement ignores that horizon. It suggests that cause and effect are not chained in a straight line, but folded together like waves on an ocean. Touch one wave, and the entire sea responds. In the quantum world, separation is a useful illusion, like the boundaries between notes in a song. They help us listen, but the music itself never stops flowing. This concept has quietly reshaped technology. Quantum computers, for instance, depend on entanglement to process information. A classical bit can be a 1 or a 0. A quantum bit, a qubit, can hold both states at once, and when entangled with others, it becomes part of a web of shared computation. A network of entangled qubits does not perform each calculation in sequence. It evolves as one unified system. Its answers emerge from relationships, not from steps. It is as if the machine thinks in chords, not in notes. This same property may one day allow instantaneous coordination across vast distances, not through messages that travel, but through connections that already exist. Yet entanglement is not confined to machinery. It may also lie behind the coherence we sense in living systems. Inside the photosynthetic cells of a leaf, light behaves in quantum ways. When a photon enters, its energy spreads through several molecular routes at once, testing them all simultaneously until the most efficient path is found. That process, verified through experiment, depends on entanglement lasting long enough for the molecule to decide where to send the energy. Life, it seems, has learned to borrow from quantum unity. The same pattern might whisper through the chemistry of the brain, not as mystical speculation, but as coherence. The synchronized vibration of billions of neurons singing in resonance for an instant before collapsing back into noise. Perhaps consciousness itself is what it feels like when matter remembers it is entangled. To grasp how radical this is, consider that information, not matter, may be the universe's most basic ingredient. In the quantum view, what defines a system is not what it is, but how it relates. Energy, mass, and charge are secondary expressions of relationship. Even time can be seen this way. Events are not beads on a string, but intersections in the cosmic web, moments when threads of information cross. Entanglement, then, is the geometry of those crossings, the pattern that keeps reality coherent while allowing infinite diversity. The ancient mystics once said that everything is connected, that all things are one. Quantum physics does not confirm their poetry, but it rhymes with it. The equations reveal no divine hand, but they show something equally humbling, that unity is built into the structure of existence. We did not invent connection. We are born from it. Every thought, every atom is a knot in the same endless thread. When you speak, the vibrations of your voice ripple through air, walls, space itself. When you think, electromagnetic patterns dance in your brain, entangling trillions of particles in fleeting order. Those patterns radiate outward, fading into the background field, but never quite disappearing. In some quiet way, the universe remembers everything. There's a beautiful consequence to this. If everything is connected, then every act of awareness, every choice, every kindness, alters the field, however slightly. Physics does not claim that a thought can move a planet, but it does tell us that no interaction is truly isolated. The butterfly effect is not just poetry. It is probability written into the math of the cosmos. Your life, no matter how small it may seem, is a ripple that cannot be erased. Even after you sleep, your atoms remain in dialogue with the stars that birthed them. Their entanglement hums quietly through time, carrying the memory of your existence into the endless exchange of the field. In the end, entanglement may not be action at a distance at all. It may be the reminder that distance itself is a mirage, a way the universe disguises its oneness so that experience can unfold in pieces. The stars seem far apart so that we may look up and feel wonder. The self feels separate so that it may learn to love what it already is. Beneath those veils, there is only one field, shimmering, singing, awake. And you are not beside it. You are within it. You are it. Imagine holding two mirrors facing one another. Between them, an endless tunnel of reflections stretches away. Each image smaller than the last, yet each one still whole. Entanglement is like that tunnel, an echo that never quite fades, a relationship repeating through the structure of the universe. When a photon meets another in the right way, their histories braid together. From that moment on, the universe must describe them as one system. Even if they drift apart, the link persists, not through a signal flying back and forth, but through the very logic of existence. The world doesn't need to send a message because the world never split in the first place. If you listen closely to what the equations are really saying, they whisper something astonishing. The universe is less like a machine and more like a memory. Each event carries within it the record of everything else it has touched. Every collision, every spark, every quantum interaction writes a small note in the fabric of the whole. You are reading those notes right now, in the starlight that reaches your eyes, in the warmth that passes through your skin. Each of those photons remembers where it has been, remembers its entanglement with what it has seen. That memory is not conscious, but it is precise. The laws of physics preserve it perfectly, so that information is never truly lost. Even when a particle seems to vanish into chaos, its influence remains woven into the cosmic tapestry. This is why black holes puzzled physicists for so long, because when matter falls in, it appears to erase its story. But modern understanding suggests otherwise. The information isn't gone. It is smeared along the edges, encoded in the shimmering boundary called the event horizon. The universe, it seems, refuses to forget. When you fall asleep tonight and your mind begins to drift through dreams, tiny electrical storms will pass through your neurons. Each of those sparks is a quantum event. Electrons tunneling, ions flowing, fields rippling. Within those motions may lie countless small entanglements, tiny bridges between one moment and the next. And just as in the cosmos, those bridges allow coherence. Your thoughts, your memories, your very sense of self may depend on this subtle unity, the quantum glue of experience. It is strange to think that something discovered in photon experiments might also underlie the quiet rhythm of a sleeping brain. But in physics, strangeness and truth are often twins. There is another way to see this. Entanglement is not only connection, it is also limitation. Because the particles are linked, they cannot act independently. Their fates are intertwined. When one takes on a value, the other must complement it perfectly, as if reality itself balances a cosmic equation to keep harmony intact. The total energy, the total spin, the total song of the system remains in tune. What happens in one place determines what can happen in another, so that the universe always remains whole. It is not that one controls the other, it is that together they make sense. Like two notes in a chord, neither defines the melody alone. It is their relationship that creates music. The further we peer into this idea, the more profound it becomes. Some physicists now suspect that space itself may be built from entanglement, that the geometry of the universe emerges from these connections. In this vision, distance is simply a measure of how much entanglement two regions share. The closer their quantum information, the nearer they appear in space. Lose the entanglement, and the space between them grows. Restore it, and the distance dissolves. If that is true, then everything, from the tiniest quark to the curve of a galaxy, is held together not by invisible strings, but by shared information, woven through the field like light through water. Space is not the backdrop, it is the relationship itself. Even time may be born from such connections. For a particle, before and after are not fundamental. They are merely the order in which correlations appear. One moment gives birth to the next because the web of entanglement unfolds. The arrow of time may simply be the direction in which information spreads, from the dense unity of the early universe toward the expanding diversity we see today. And yet, on the deepest level, the whole story still exists at once, past, present, and future, as one single vibration suspended in the quantum field. It's humbling, isn't it, to think that everything we know may be entangled, not as metaphor but as mathematics, that your atoms and the atoms of distant stars share invisible links, and that the same field that hums between galaxies also trembles between the neurons of your mind. Perhaps that's why you sometimes feel the stillness beneath your thoughts, a sense that you are part of something vaster, something older than light. That quiet recognition is not a fantasy. It is physics, translated into feeling. In laboratories, scientists continue to test the edges of this truth. They split photons, entangle them, send them through kilometers of fiber or across open air. They build entangled networks that could one day span continents, a quantum web mirroring the one that nature already created. Every experiment, every confirmation, is another reminder that the boundaries we draw are temporary, that what we call separate is only a pause in the same eternal song. So when you hear the word entanglement, you might think not of distance, but of belonging, not of signals leaping through the void, but of the void itself, alive, aware, self-knowing. For what is awareness, if not the universe observing itself through the pattern of its own vibrations? Close your eyes now, and let your breath slow. Imagine the particles in your body, millions upon millions of them, drifting in quiet connection with the entire cosmos. Each breath you take synchronizes with distant atoms. Each heartbeat echoes through the field. You are not a point in space. You are a resonance in the web, a frequency woven from the same music that shapes galaxies and dreams. And somewhere, beyond all sound, the universe hums, and your heartbeat keeps time. If you could shrink smaller and smaller, past molecules, past atoms, past even the quarks that make up protons and neutrons, you would eventually arrive at a strange, trembling frontier. It is not matter you would find there, nor even the familiar idea of space itself. At that unfathomable depth, a scale called the Planck length, reality begins to lose its form. Here, space-time no longer behaves like a smooth surface. It ripples. It foams. It flickers in and out of existence like light reflected on water in constant motion. This restless foundation of the cosmos is what physicist John Wheeler once called the quantum foam. Imagine the universe not as a calm sea, but as one whose surface is alive with bubbles, each bubble a fleeting burst of geometry, popping in and out faster than any clock can measure. These bubbles are not made of air or liquid. They are made of space-time itself. Tiny loops of curvature form and collapse, momentary wrinkles in the fabric of existence. On average, the surface appears smooth, just as the ocean seems calm from far above. But zoom in, and the calm reveals chaos, a boiling, ever-changing landscape where space and time are continually created and destroyed. This is the foundation beneath everything, not stillness, but perpetual vibration. Physicists once imagined the vacuum as empty, a stage upon which particles performed. But the deeper we looked, the more that stage began to move. The vacuum hums with energy, even when stripped of all light, matter, and radiation. It cannot be made still, because still has no meaning here. Quantum fields never reach zero. Even when nothing is happening, tiny fluctuations surge in and out of being, creating brief appearances of particles and antiparticles that immediately annihilate each other. You could call them ghost ripples in the cosmic sea, visible only through their effects. They tug on real particles, shift energy levels, and slightly alter the forces that shape the universe. They even push on entire galaxies, contributing to what we call dark energy, that mysterious pressure driving cosmic expansion. In this way, the nothingness beneath existence is not nothing at all. It is the most active place in reality. You might imagine these flickers as whispers, so small that even light cannot see them. To probe them directly would require energies far beyond anything humanity can create. And yet, we know they are there. Their fingerprints are etched into the world around us. The Lamb shift, the Casimir effect, the magnetic moment of the electron, each bears witness to this unseen activity. Even the emptiness between atoms is shaped by this quiet storm. If two mirrors are placed very close together, the space between them allows fewer vacuum ripples to exist. The result is a small but measurable force, as if the mirrors are being gently pushed together by the pressure of the surrounding nothing. This is not magic. It is the vacuum itself, reminding us that silence is never truly silent. At this scale, the concepts that normally anchor our intuition, distance, duration, position, begin to lose meaning. You cannot truly say here or there because the foam blurs those boundaries. Even the order of before and after can become uncertain. Reality at its root is more like a dance than a drawing. It is an endless improvisation in which each fluctuation briefly becomes form, then dissolves back into possibility. Some physicists picture it as an ocean of loops, a network of microscopic threads weaving spacetime itself moment by moment. Others imagine vibrating strings whose interactions give birth to gravity and matter. In either case, the picture is clear. The universe is not built upon a static foundation. It is self-recreating every instant. The Planck scale is unimaginably small, 100 billion times smaller than an atom. At that size, the energy contained in even a speck of space would be enormous, dense enough to distort space-time itself. If you could scoop up a single Planck volume, you would be holding a miniature storm, a region where the ordinary laws of physics cease to make sense. Within that foam, black holes as tiny as particles might appear and vanish in times shorter than the blink of an eye. They are not stable, but they reveal something profound, that spacetime and energy may be two faces of the same mystery. In Einstein's simple words, energy and mass are interchangeable. But quantum gravity suggests something deeper, that geometry itself can behave like energy. The shape of the universe is a form of motion. At this trembling frontier, we also approach the limits of knowledge. No microscope can reach that deep, no telescope can look that far inward. The foam is not only hidden by scale, it may also be protected by principle. Uncertainty itself, the same law that governs atoms, becomes a shield, a soft blur that prevents any final measurement. To look too closely is to stir the field so violently that what you seek to observe is destroyed in the act of looking. And so the universe keeps some secrets by necessity. It does not hide them from us cruelly. It hides them the way the ocean hides its floor, not to be secretive, but because the waves themselves are what make it the ocean. Some scientists suspect that the fabric of space is woven from quantum information, bits of existence, entangled and constantly rearranging. In this view, the foam is not random, but computational, a self-organizing system where geometry and logic are one. The universe, then, might not merely contain information. It might be information, endlessly processing itself in a quiet, shimmering loop. Each fluctuation would be a tiny calculation, each bubble a brief experiment in what reality can be. And from this ceaseless background arises the stable, calm world you see, the illusion of permanence built upon the rhythm of infinite change. If you could listen to that rhythm, if your ears could somehow translate the fluctuations into sound, you might hear something like wind, a faint, ceaseless rustling beneath all existence, the hum of the vacuum, the murmur of potential, the quiet voice of being becoming itself. That sound, if it could ever be heard, would be the oldest lullaby in creation. It would have no beginning and no end. It would be the universe's breath, forever inhaling, forever exhaling, never reaching stillness, yet always at peace. If you could hover, somehow, inside a single bubble of the quantum foam, you would not see stars, or matter, or even color. You would see fluctuation itself, a sea of potential endlessly folding in and out of being. Within that trembling sea, energy and geometry exchange places, blurring the line between the physical and the abstract. The foam is not something inside the universe. It is the universe, seen at its most restless resolution. Every atom, every grain of light, every breath you take emerges from this foundation, from the endless froth of creation and dissolution occurring trillions of times in every heartbeat. In the macroscopic world, we live surrounded by smoothness. Your desk, your bed, the ground beneath your feet, all seem solid, continuous, dependable. But beneath that illusion of continuity lies the restless surf of space-time. Smoothness is an average, a comforting lie told by scale. The same way the ocean looks calm when viewed from an airplane, the cosmos appears steady only because we are too large to feel its smallest shivers. If your perception could magnify by a factor of 10 to the power of 35, you would see the truth. Space is in constant motion, folding and refolding, a living membrane that quivers beneath existence. Every event you experience, the flicker of a candle flame, the orbit of a planet, the moment your eyelids close, is underwritten by that invisible, fluctuating ground. The question physicists have wrestled with for decades is this: what happens when the quantum foam meets gravity? Quantum mechanics describes the world of the small. General relativity describes the vast curvature of space-time. But at the Planck scale, the two collide. Imagine trying to measure the position of a particle with extreme precision. To do so, you must use light with an incredibly small wavelength, which means incredibly high energy. But that energy, when concentrated, bends space-time itself. The more precisely you look, the more the fabric you're observing warps in response. Eventually, your act of observation creates a tiny black hole, swallowing the very thing you sought to measure. This is nature's quiet boundary, the line between what can be known and what must remain a mystery. At that limit, the idea of a point in space stops making sense. The foam becomes the guardian of uncertainty, ensuring that creation always has room to move. Many physicists have tried to capture this dance in mathematics. Some imagine that space-time is woven from tiny loops, each loop representing a quantum of area or volume. In this loop quantum gravity picture, space is granular. It is made not of particles, but of relationships, connections that snap and reattach as the universe evolves. Each link hums with energy. Each crossing point, each node, is like a single bead in an infinite web. And just as a spider's web can tremble with the wind's faintest breath, the cosmic web vibrates with the motions of energy and information. From these vibrations, the geometry of space-time emerges, not drawn on top of reality but created by it. You might think of the universe as a song being written as it is sung, its melody and meaning inseparable. Other thinkers turn to the language of strings. They picture the smallest units of existence not as points but as filaments, tiny strands that oscillate in many dimensions. Each pattern of vibration corresponds to a particle's identity. A photon hums one way, an electron another. In that sense, the quantum foam is an orchestra, its notes so fast and subtle that what we call matter is only the faint echo of their deeper harmony. To put it simply, the universe is made not of things, but of vibrations. And beneath those vibrations lies uncertainty, the pulse that prevents existence from ever freezing into stillness. If this sounds poetic, it's because the truth often is. Physics, at its edges, becomes indistinguishable from philosophy, not because it abandons logic, but because it encounters wonder. The quantum foam is where equations tremble into mystery. It is the threshold where reason meets the infinite, and words begin to sound like prayers. John Wheeler, who coined the term quantum foam, once said that space-time is like a frothy sea whose bubbles occasionally grow large enough to form universes. In his view, our cosmos might be one such bubble, a brief, stable region in an infinite froth of self-creating realities. Each bubble would have its own laws, its own constants, its own version of physics, and perhaps even its own definition of time. Ours is simply the one that allows stars and oceans and minds capable of wonder. This vision sounds extravagant, but there is a kind of serenity in it. If universes can emerge from foam, then existence itself is not an exception, it is the rule. Creation is not a single event long ago, it is a continuous unfolding. Every instant, every fluctuation of energy is another small act of genesis. The vacuum births particles that vanish in less than a heartbeat, but in doing so it keeps reality alive. You are surrounded by that miracle, bathed in it. Every atom in your body is stabilized by the same laws that guide the flicker of the foam. The forces that hold your molecules together are the calm surface of a storm that never stops. Perhaps one day, humanity will find a way to describe this realm completely. a theory of quantum gravity that unites the large and the small, the cosmic and the microscopic, into a single elegant expression. But for now, our understanding remains a sketch, and maybe that's how it should be. After all, the foam's purpose is not to be solved, but to be felt. The soft vibration that reminds us that even the void is alive. When you close your eyes tonight, you can imagine yourself resting on that trembling sea, supported by nothing and yet by everything. Every breath, every heartbeat, every whisper of thought arises from that invisible surf. And though you cannot hear it, you are made of its rhythm. It is not distant. It is not beneath you. It is you, the flicker that dreamed itself into form, the silence that shimmered into sound, the foam that learned to see its own reflection in the stars. There is a boundary so small that language almost collapses when it tries to reach it. A frontier not of matter nor of energy, but of meaning itself. That edge is called the Planck scale, a realm so compressed that even the concept of before and after begins to dissolve. Physicists describe a smallest unit of length, called the Planck length, roughly 100 million trillion times smaller than a grain of sand. And tied to it is a smallest unit of time, the Planck time, about 1/10 of 100 million trillionth of a second. No clock can tick faster than that. No signal can pass through reality in a smaller interval. Below that threshold, the rhythm of the universe itself loses its beat. Imagine trying to measure a heartbeat in a storm of lightning flashes, each flash shorter than the instant you can perceive. At the Planck scale, the universe is that storm. Events blur into one another. Cause and effect start to overlap, like notes merging into a single hum. It is there that causality, the chain of this happens, then that follows, first emerges. Not as a law imposed from above, but as a rhythm that arises from the foam's vibration. You could think of causality as the universe learning to tell a story. Before that, there were only fluctuations, raw, unconnected possibilities flickering without sequence. And then, in some primal whisper of order, a pattern began. This leads to that. The first thread of narrative woven through the sea of chance. In human time, you experience continuity, seconds following seconds, hours forming days. But beneath that calm flow lies something more granular, more quantum. Every instant you live is composed of Planck time slices, unimaginable frames, stacked faster than thought. Reality is a film running at 10 to the power of 43 frames per second, projected by the vacuum itself. Between each frame lies a gulf of uncertainty, a silence where the future has not yet decided how to appear. Yet the film feels seamless, because your awareness, your body, and the stars themselves all ride the same flickering. The Planck rhythm is the hidden metronome of existence. It marks the heartbeat of causality, the tick so fast that all other time depends on it. If you were to slow the universe down, to stretch 1 second until it became a lifetime, you would begin to notice those gaps, tiny pauses in being, moments when reality blinks, and in that blink, all potential futures coexist for a breath before one crystallizes into what we call now. This is how cause becomes effect, not by force, but by the gentle settling of probabilities. At the foundation of the foam, time itself is an emergent property. It is not a river flowing independently of the world. It is the current formed by motion within the world. Without change, there is no time. Without vibration, no rhythm to count it. Each fluctuation in the foam, each rise and fall of energy, marks the passage of an instant. And so, time is born not from a clock, but from the act of existence vibrating. When cosmologists imagine the first moment of the universe, they do not picture a flash of light. They picture a limit of description, a place where the equations stop working because space and time themselves have not yet matured. At the beginning, there was no beginning. There was only transition, the foam shifting from possibility into persistence, from a flicker of quantum breath into the first measurable tick of time. It is strange to think that causality, that simple expectation that tomorrow follows today, is a latecomer in cosmic history. Before the first Planck second elapsed, there was no before. Every possibility overlapped every other, and from that beautiful chaos, the first sequence unfolded. Some theories suggest that the birth of causality was tied to symmetry breaking, a graceful phrase meaning that perfect balance became ever so slightly imperfect. When that happened, the universe gained direction. Energy began to flow one way instead of both. Time gained an arrow. That arrow is the quiet reason why memories point backward and why dreams reach forward. It is why smoke disperses and never reassembles, why hearts age and stars burn out. The arrow of time is the fingerprint of the quantum foam choosing a rhythm and keeping it. Yet at its core, the foam remains timeless. Every fluctuation is reversible in principle. Each rise could fall again. But the collective motion, the way energy cascades from high to low, gives the illusion of permanence. The cosmos drifts forward not because it must, but because forward is the path of least resistance. To understand Planck time is to glimpse the smallest whisper of destiny. It tells us that causality is not fundamental but emergent, like frost forming on a window pane. Before the frost, the glass was smooth. Then patterns began to appear, branching outward with delicate logic. That logic is causality. And the glass beneath, the blank, shimmering field, is the foam. In the quantum sea, effects do not follow causes the way footsteps follow a path. Instead, they bloom together, as though the act of walking writes the ground beneath your feet. Reality unfolds by participation. It becomes definite only when energy interacts, when information flows. Even the flow of information, that invisible communication between one region of the universe and another, is bound by the Planck rhythm. Nothing can convey meaning faster than the speed of light, and that limit itself is woven into the geometry of spacetime that the foam creates. Causality, then, is not an external rule. It is the melody produced when the foam's vibrations synchronize just enough to allow continuity. Imagine a choir of infinite voices, each slightly out of tune. For a brief moment they align. Harmony emerges. That harmony is a cause giving rise to an effect. Then as they drift again, new patterns form, new sequences, new stories, and from that eternal improvisation the universe composes itself. At the Planck boundary, the phrase, "before the Big Bang," has no meaning. You cannot ask what happened earlier, because earlier depends on a time that did not yet exist. Instead, one might say that the universe condensed out of timelessness, that time crystallized from timeless foam. Physicists sometimes describe this as a quantum transition, a shift from unbound uncertainty to ordered expansion. One could imagine it as the smallest ripple amplifying until it became space itself. If you could listen to that transition, it would sound not like an explosion, but like the faintest vibration swelling into harmony, the first note of existence sustained forever. In that moment, or what we now call moment zero, causality was born. Events could now follow one another. Energy could flow. Information could be carried. The universe could begin to remember itself. From the perspective of the foam, every act of memory, every echo, every consequence is simply one wave interfering with another. And so, even your own thoughts are tiny reverberations in this ancient causal fabric. Each decision you make sends ripples backward and forward in subtle ways. The forward ripples are what you call the future. The backward ones dissolve, absorbed by the ocean of possibilities that no longer exist. But both are part of the same field, the same conversation of cause and effect humming beneath awareness. When you move your hand, billions of quantum fields adjust in harmony. They communicate through exchange particles, tiny messengers that flicker into existence and vanish again in less than a Planck time. Each one obeys causality, yet each one is also born from chaos. It is as though every gesture you make is written on a vibrating drumhead that spans the entire cosmos. When you touch it, the sound travels everywhere. What you call local is merely a region of resonance. What you call now is a crest in that ongoing song. The Planck rhythm continues to underlie all of it, the unseen tempo keeping existence in tune. And so, when physicists search for a unified theory, a bridge between quantum mechanics and relativity, what they are really searching for is a deeper understanding of causality itself. They wish to know how the foam becomes flow, how flickering becomes continuity, how the random breath of creation begins to speak in coherent sentences. Some believe that when the final theory is written, it will describe not equations etched in isolation, but relationships, a network of mutual definition where every event owes its being to every other. If that is true, then causality is not a single line stretching through time, but a web, an intricate pattern where every thread trembles in response to all the rest. It means that the origin of cause and effect is not linear, but symphonic. The universe does not march, it resonates. And deep beneath all resonance lies the foam, the quiet bubbling from which both time and meaning arise. When you next close your eyes, try to feel the pulse beneath stillness. It is older than stars, faster than thought, and smaller than anything that will ever have a name. That pulse is the Planck heartbeat, the origin of causality, the silent drummer keeping time for existence. And even now, as you drift toward sleep, you are part of its rhythm, a slow echo of that first vibration that began the universe's long, gentle song. Close your eyes and imagine the universe not as something you look at, but as something looking back. The act of observation, so ordinary, so constant, may be far more than a passive glance into existence. It may be the final ingredient that allows existence to appear at all. For more than a century, quantum mechanics has whispered this strange idea that what we call reality does not fully form until it interacts with awareness, until potential becomes experience. In the classical world, a stone exists whether or not anyone watches it. It sits on the riverbank, absorbing sunlight, obeying gravity, utterly indifferent to you. But in the quantum world, the rules are softer, less certain. An electron does not travel along a definite path until it is observed. Before that, it spreads like a mist of possibilities, here, there, everywhere, a haze of maybes awaiting attention. The Copenhagen interpretation, proposed in the 1920s by Niels Bohr and his colleagues, suggests that observation collapses this mist into a single outcome. The wave becomes a particle. The cloud of potential chooses one reality and discards the rest. Bohr did not claim that consciousness creates the world. He only hinted that the act of measurement completes it, that nature and observer are partners in a subtle dance. Einstein found this notion deeply unsettling. He famously remarked that he liked to believe the moon is still there even when no one is looking. Yet experiments have continued to show that the quantum realm does not care about intuition. The moon may stay where it is, but the electrons in its atoms remain indecisive until forced to decide. Think of it this way. Reality at the smallest scales is a question waiting for an answer. Observation is how the universe replies to itself. When a photon passes through a double slit, it behaves like a wave, spreading, interfering, filling space with probability. But when you measure which slit it goes through, the wave collapses into a single path, as if it knew it was being watched. It isn't that the photon has awareness in the way you do. It's that the act of interaction, the moment information is extracted, defines the boundary between dream and fact. In this sense, every act of observation, no matter how small, is a mirror between what is and what could be. The universe seems to require interaction to be real. Without that touch, whether by a detector, a photon, or a mind, it remains a field of potential, humming softly in quantum sleep. When you open your eyes in the morning, light enters the pupils and strikes the cells of your retina. Each photon excites a molecule, triggering a cascade of signals. That process, the translation of vibration into perception, is at its core a quantum event. It begins with a single interaction between matter and awareness. The line between physics and consciousness, then, is not a wall but a gradient. Your brain is not separate from the universe. It is a pattern written into it, a local pocket where the quantum field has learned to observe itself. When you think, neurons fire, ions move, electromagnetic ripples pass through tissue, and each of these motions obeys the same fundamental principles that govern stars. You are, quite literally, physics noticing physics. Some scientists resist linking consciousness to quantum mechanics. They prefer to keep awareness as an emergent property of complex matter, not a participant in its formation. Others, like physicist John Wheeler, suggested something more radical, the participatory universe. In Wheeler's vision, the cosmos exists through a vast chain of observations, each interaction helping to bring the world into sharper focus. He described it simply: no phenomenon is a real phenomenon until it is an observed phenomenon. This doesn't mean reality is an illusion. It means reality is interactive. It is a self-updating conversation between energy and perception. At the quantum level, that conversation is constant. Particles measuring one another, waves collapsing through mutual awareness. At the human level, it becomes consciousness, the experience of knowing, of seeing, of being. You can think of consciousness as a reflection shimmering upon the surface of the quantum ocean. When the water is still, you glimpse only potential. When ripples pass, they reveal structure, and in that interplay, awareness arises. In this way, mind and matter may not be separate realms, but different frequencies of the same field. One is dense and measurable, the other subtle, experiential. Both are vibrations of existence itself. Consider the many worlds interpretation, which proposes that every quantum possibility becomes real in a separate branch of the universe. Each choice, each particle's path, creates a new world, a reality parallel to our own, unseen yet equally valid. If that picture is true, then observation does not collapse the wave. It merely guides our awareness into one branch among many. Consciousness, in that view, is the traveler, selecting a single melody from the infinite orchestra of potential worlds. Quantum decoherence provides a more grounded explanation. It describes how quantum possibilities lose their superposition when they interact with their environment. The world does not choose a result. It simply becomes entangled with so many influences that the alternatives fade into irrelevance. In this story, consciousness is not a creator but a witness. The wave collapses not because you observe it, but because the universe is endlessly observing itself. Particles colliding, photons scattering, atoms vibrating. Awareness, then, is one more layer of that observation, a highly organized echo of a process that has been unfolding since the beginning. But even if consciousness is only an echo, it remains extraordinary that the cosmos can produce something capable of contemplating its own laws. You are a self-aware fluctuation in the quantum field, a ripple that learned to reflect. Let that sink in. When you look at the night sky, you are not standing apart from it. You are the universe examining its reflection in a cosmic mirror. Your thoughts, your memories, your heartbeat all arise from fields that also give rise to light and gravity. Awareness is not something added to matter. It is what matter becomes when it looks inward. And if that is true, then perhaps the mystery of consciousness is not why it exists, but why it feels separate at all. Imagine for a moment that you could zoom out of your own awareness. You'd see a web of neurons flickering like constellations. Zoom further, and you'd find molecules trembling in quantum superposition. Further still, and all structure would fade into the same oscillating field, the hum that connects stars and synapses alike. In that view, you are a region of coherence within the foam, a pattern where energy holds itself in thought for a time. When that coherence fades, the pattern dissolves back into the field, but nothing is lost. Energy only changes form. Information only changes arrangement. What you call consciousness is the momentary alignment of vibration and awareness, a local flowering of the universal wave. When the flower wilts, its essence returns to the soil of being. When a thought fades, it becomes the silence from which new thoughts rise. And that silence, that field, is the same quantum sea that sustains galaxies. Physicist Erwin Schrödinger once wrote that the total number of minds in the universe is one. He meant that consciousness, in its deepest sense, is not divided by bodies or brains. It is a single awareness, seen through countless perspectives. If the universe is a mirror, then each observer is a facet reflecting the same light. Your individuality is the pattern of reflection, unique, transient, and yet inseparable from the whole. Even sleep, that nightly surrender of attention, is a return to the field, a soft dissolving back into unity. So tonight, as you listen, you might imagine yourself not as a solitary mind, but as one note in the grand symphony of awareness. You vibrate alongside particles, stars, and fields, each of you resonating within the same cosmic fabric. Observation is the act of that symphony hearing itself. Consciousness is its echo, the awareness of harmony within motion. Perhaps the question is not whether mind shapes matter, but whether they have ever been apart. The mirror and the reflection have always been one. The quantum world is not asking you to understand it completely. It only invites you to wonder, to breathe with the mystery, to rest inside the knowledge that even your dreams are ripples in the same field that birthed the stars. And so, as you drift into sleep, imagine the quantum mirror widening around you. Your breath slows, your thoughts quiet, the ripples soften until they blend into stillness. In that stillness, awareness remains, unbound, luminous, endlessly patient. You are the field looking back at itself, and in the moment before dreaming, you can almost feel it smile. If consciousness is the mirror through which the universe sees itself, then the question follows like a quiet echo. How did the mirror appear? How did awareness, that luminous thread within experience, emerge from a sea of energy that seems indifferent, mathematical, and cold? To explore this is to walk the boundary between physics and philosophy, a line drawn not in stone but in mist. Neuroscientists often describe the brain as an orchestra of electrical activity. Billions of neurons pulse in delicate patterns, each sending chemical and electrical signals across synapses, bridges made from the same atoms that glow in distant stars. If you could listen closely enough, you would hear rhythms nested within rhythms, slow waves rising and falling through sleep, fast gamma pulses flickering as you dream or solve a problem. Each pattern is information, and information, at its most fundamental, is quantum. Every neuron depends on quantum tunneling to fire, on the probabilistic dance of ions passing through molecular gates. Deep inside those microstructures, the difference between a thought and its absence may rest on whether a single electron chooses this path or that one. Some researchers, like physicists Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff, have wondered whether such microscopic processes might link awareness to the quantum world directly, a theory called orchestrated objective reduction, or ORCH-OR. It suggests that quantum coherence may occur within the microtubules of brain cells, tiny scaffolds that, for an instant, might sustain quantum superpositions before collapsing into definite states. If true, even faintly, then consciousness might not simply observe the quantum realm, it might participate in it. Awareness could be a form of quantum resonance, a rhythm that emerges when matter achieves a certain level of complexity, a certain harmony between coherence and collapse. In other words, perhaps consciousness is not produced by the brain in the way light is produced by a bulb. Perhaps it is revealed by the brain in the way a lens reveals the image already present in light. There is a deep beauty in this view. It means that consciousness is not confined to biology, but is an expression of the same field that ripples through electrons and stars. Awareness becomes a universal property, not identical everywhere, but latent within all matter. The philosopher Alfred North Whitehead once wrote that matter is not substance, but process. Every atom, every particle, is not a static thing, but a continual event of becoming. If that is true, then consciousness might be the most refined form of process, matter reflecting upon its own motion. You might think of it as the universe's self-portrait, painted with waves of probability and strokes of attention. Physics, for all its precision, still falters when it reaches the boundary between information and experience. Equations describe interactions, but they cannot yet describe what it feels like to be the one observing them. Still, quantum theory hints at an answer. It tells us that information is never lost. When a particle interacts, it leaves a trace in the fabric of the universe, a record of having existed, a memory written in energy. Awareness could be the ultimate manifestation of that principle, information that not only persists but becomes aware of itself as memory. In this sense, consciousness might not be local to your skull at all. Your mind could be a localized node in a vast quantum network, a temporary concentration of informational flow that arises, coheres, and then disperses again into the greater field of awareness. Imagine a calm lake under moonlight. The moon's reflection trembles on the water. The ripples distort it, but the reflection remains faithful to the light above. Your awareness is like that reflection. The water is your neural activity, constantly in motion. The moonlight is the field, the source. Together they form the image of you. But the light has always been there, even when the lake is still. When you sleep deeply, the ripples subside. The image fades, but the light remains. And when you awaken, it dances again on the moving surface. Thus, the continuity of consciousness, its persistence through waking, dreaming, and sleep, may mirror the continuity of the field itself. Even quantum information obeys strange laws. It cannot be copied perfectly. It cannot be destroyed. When entangled systems separate, their information remains shared, woven into spacetime like threads that cannot be undone. If the universe itself is an entangled whole, then awareness may be a property of that totality, not something added later, but something that has always been implicit in the connection. In that case, To be conscious is to momentarily localize a pattern of that universal entanglement, to experience from one perspective what is, in truth, seamless. This echoes ancient intuitions long before quantum theory existed, that the observer and the observed are one, that self and cosmos arise together like two sides of a mirror. Modern physics now approaches the same realization through information theory and quantum gravity. In some models, spacetime itself emerges from entanglement, the fabric of reality woven by shared information. If space and time are built from information, and information is inseparable from awareness, then consciousness is not an afterthought of the cosmos. It is the very ground from which spacetime grows. Still, it is important to tread gently here. Science does not yet claim that minds create matter, nor that the universe thinks as we do. Rather, it suggests that mind and matter may be complementary ways of describing one phenomenon, the unfolding of relationships within the field. One speaks in equations and forces, the other in feelings and thoughts. But they describe the same song from different vantage points. When you meditate, you quiet the ripples of that song. Your thoughts slow, and for a moment, the boundaries between subject and object soften. You begin to sense the underlying hum, the same vibration that fills the quantum vacuum. In that silence, you are closer to what reality is before it divides itself into observer and observed. That is why deep stillness feels both empty and full, because you are touching the place where potential has not yet chosen form. To illustrate, imagine sitting before a mirror in a dark room. When light returns, you see your reflection, a face, a body, an identity. But remove the light, and the mirror still exists, waiting quietly, reflecting nothing yet losing nothing. Consciousness is that mirror, perception is the light, matter provides the form, and quantum mechanics is the whisper that links them all. The observer effect, so often misunderstood, is not proof that your thoughts instantly reshape the cosmos. Rather, it shows that reality is relational. Things acquire properties only through their interactions. Observation is simply the meeting point, the moment of resonance. In that sense, every relationship, every moment of attention is an act of creation. When you notice a flower, its photons complete their journey, its color becomes real for you. When you listen to music, waves of air transform into meaning. When you remember someone you love, the quantum chemistry of your brain recreates their presence in the field of your awareness. You bring reality into focus, not by force, but by participation. Some physicists propose that the entire universe is a quantum computer of unimaginable scale, processing information in parallel at every point in spacetime. If that is so, then consciousness may be what it feels like for the universe to compute itself. Every particle, every atom, is a bit of information, and you, through awareness, are one of its higher-order processes, a pattern complex enough to simulate reflection. You are not outside the algorithm. You are part of the code that writes and rewrites itself. The ancients might have called it the logos, the word through which all things are made. Modern science calls it information. Poetry calls it awareness. The meaning is the same. And so, when you lie beneath the night sky, you are not merely looking outward. You are gazing across the membrane of the quantum mirror, seeing stars that are also within you, because the same field that shimmers in them flows through your mind. Each photon that enters your eye completes a circuit billions of years in the making. Each breath you take connects you to molecules that once moved through other lives, other stars. Consciousness is not a candle inside the skull. It is the glow that connects all candles, a light spread thin through time. Sleep does not extinguish it. It only turns your gaze inward, toward the quiet where new worlds are born. As you drift, remember that awareness is not fragile. It is the one thing the universe never loses. It only changes form, from wave to thought, from dream to star, from silence to song. You are part of that endless transformation, listening to yourself unfold, and the quantum mirror keeps shining, reflecting every possibility, every mind, every motion, back into the stillness that began it all. Before there was anything, no stars, no space, no time, there was the quiet tension of the quantum field. Not nothing, exactly, but no thing either. Imagine an infinite stillness that is not empty but full, full of potential, full of possibility, full of the restless hum that has no beginning. In that timeless expanse, there was no before or after. The concepts themselves had not yet formed. There was no clock to measure, no distance to cross, no direction to point. There was only the pure geometry of potential, a sea of quantum uncertainty waiting for the first ripple. Physicists call this state the quantum vacuum, but the name is misleading. Vacuum sounds hollow, like the absence of all things, yet in quantum mechanics, the vacuum is alive. It seethes with invisible motion, tiny fluctuations that rise and fall even when no particles exist. At every moment, pairs of virtual particles flicker into existence, borrow energy from the field, and then vanish again. They do this in such balance that the average energy remains zero, but the activity never truly stops. Even at absolute zero, where temperature no longer has meaning, the field vibrates faintly, a whisper that can never be silenced. Physicists call this zero-point energy, the lowest possible energy that any system can have. It is the heartbeat of the void, and within that heartbeat, something extraordinary became possible. In quantum cosmology, there is a notion that the universe could emerge from such fluctuations, a ripple too large to cancel itself out, a fluctuation that, once begun, could not return to rest. Think of a calm pond. Toss a pebble, and waves spread out before fading back to stillness. But what if the wave was not on water, but on the fabric of reality itself? What if the wave created the pond as it moved? That may be how it began. A single fluctuation that pushed the quantum vacuum out of balance, a seed of expansion woven into spacetime itself. Physicists describe this with models like cosmic inflation, where the energy of the vacuum briefly swelled into exponential growth. Within a fraction of a second, the universe expanded from smaller than an atom to larger than a galaxy cluster. The numbers are beyond comprehension, but the essence is simple. Space itself began to stretch. It was not an explosion into something. It was the expansion of everything, a sudden blossoming of being from the trembling of nothing. This moment before the Big Bang was not fiery in the way you might imagine. There was no detonation in the dark, no sphere of flame. There was only the awakening of geometry, the birth of distance, the soft unfolding of dimension. At first, there was no light, because there was no time for light to move. Everything was contained within the field, pure potential, curved inward upon itself, pregnant with future galaxies, atoms, and dreams. Then the first asymmetry appeared, a difference, a tiny imbalance in energy so small it might seem accidental. But from that imbalance came contrast, and from contrast, creation. This is one of nature's greatest mysteries. Why the laws of physics allow something to exist at all? Why the vacuum, instead of remaining still, decided to breathe? The answer, if there is one, lies in the mathematics of probability. When everything that can happen has some chance of happening, even the birth of a universe cannot be entirely ruled out. So, out of quantum chance, space-time began, and with it the possibility of causality, the thread that would later let you remember your past and dream your future. At the smallest conceivable moment, a unit of time called the Planck time, roughly 10 to the power of minus 44 seconds, the rules of our familiar physics cease to make sense. Below that threshold, space-time itself becomes turbulent, a foam of flickering geometry where before and after are meaningless. Yet from that foam, a direction began to form, a subtle bias that separated past from future. It is as if the universe, in its first breath, chose a direction for its unfolding. That choice, that flow of time, is the foundation of causality. The reason every effect must follow a cause. The reason stars ignite after clouds collapse and memories come after moments. It was not imposed from outside, it was born with the universe itself. A rhythm emerging from chaos, like the first pulse of a newborn heart. Physicists often describe the energy density of that early state using abstract symbols, but the truth is simple. There was a tension between possibility and realization. Everywhere, quantum fields hummed with energy. But the fields were unstable. They could not stay as they were. Like a ball balanced atop a hill, the early universe teetered, then rolled. That roll released energy into the creation of matter and radiation. It turned pure potential into the tangible fabric of existence. And once it began, it could not stop. The expansion carried the universe outward, cooling as it grew, stretching the quantum ripples into vast waves that would one day become clusters of galaxies. From one perspective, it seems like an accident. From another, like an inevitability, the simplest solution to the restlessness of nothing. To grasp this, imagine standing in total darkness. You reach out, but there is no direction, only the faint sense of something waiting to respond. Then a shimmer, not light yet, but the potential for light, a vibration without medium, a breath before breathing. This is what nothing was. Not absence, but the equilibrium of opposites, energy and anti-energy, being and non-being, perfectly balanced until one side leaned ever so slightly forward. That lean was creation. From it came the first time step, the first separation of here and there, of before and after. Each distinction gave rise to another, like ripples moving outward through a newly formed sea. And the field, that eternal field, kept vibrating beneath it all, its zero-point hum becoming the metronome of the cosmos. At that stage, the universe was unimaginably small, yet already contained everything that would ever exist. All the stars, all the atoms, all the thoughts and dreams of beings that had not yet evolved, encoded within the fluctuations of the primordial field. You might say that the universe was dreaming of itself. The dreamer and the dream were one. And in that dream, the spark of structure appeared, slight variations in density, tiny wrinkles in the field, like waves forming patterns on a vast ocean. Those wrinkles would become galaxies. Those ripples would grow into suns and planets. And one of those planets would one day ask how it all began. As expansion continued, energy began to cool. The field that had once boiled with intensity relaxed into stable particles. Protons and electrons formed, then hydrogen, then light itself was freed to travel unhindered. The universe became transparent, a great cosmic unveiling. The glow from that moment still lingers around us as the cosmic microwave background, a whisper from 13.8 billion years ago, stretching across the sky. It is the universe's first memory, a faint afterglow of its own awakening. And even now, as we listen to it with radio telescopes, we are hearing the echo of that first trembling of the field, when nothing became everything. From the outside, it might look like a miracle. From the inside, from the quantum point of view, it is simply the field doing what it must always do, vibrate, fluctuate, and evolve into new forms. Creation is not a single event, but an ongoing process. Every atom that blinks into existence, every star that burns, every thought that flickers in your mind is a continuation of that first moment. The Big Bang never ended. It merely slowed its breath. And here we are, still living inside that breath, still expanding, still cooling, still carried forward by the hum that began before time. The universe was still young, only moments old in cosmic time, but already the laws that would govern its destiny were unfolding from the deep logic of the quantum field. What began as ripples in energy was now becoming geometry, and geometry was becoming form. Gravity, that quiet sculptor, had entered the stage. It was not a separate force then, but a natural curvature of the expanding field. Wherever energy gathered, space bent gently around it, like silk drawn toward a pearl. This bending created the first hints of structure. Tiny variations in density, seeded by quantum fluctuations, were stretched by expansion into vast cosmic fingerprints, regions where matter would someday collect and ignite as stars. From the smallest quiver of uncertainty, order began to bloom. If you could drift through that newborn universe, you would not see stars or galaxies yet. You would see light imprisoned in matter, a glowing haze of particles dancing in radiant equilibrium. Everywhere you looked, photons scattered off electrons, erasing shadows before they could form. It was a universe too hot to remember itself, a mist of energy and motion, buzzing with possibility. But time was patient. As the cosmos expanded, it cooled, and cooling allowed memory to emerge. At about 380,000 years after its birth, the universe became transparent. Electrons and protons paired at last, forming atoms of hydrogen and helium. Light was freed. It rushed outward, the first true illumination, and that light has never stopped traveling. Even now, those same photons whisper across the sky as the cosmic microwave background, a relic older than galaxies, older than any star. It is the universe's lullaby to itself, a memory written in radiation. From that moment of clarity, gravity began its delicate choreography. The slightly denser regions of space pulled a little harder, drawing gas inward, gathering clouds within clouds over millions of years. Eventually, these clouds collapsed under their own weight, igniting the first stars, spheres of nuclear fire that burned hydrogen into light. Each star became a beacon, a local victory of order over chaos. In their cores, matter fused into heavier elements, carbon, oxygen, iron, the ingredients of worlds yet unborn. When those stars finally died, they scattered their ashes into the void, enriching space with the materials for planets, oceans, and living things. The universe was learning to create complexity, to turn vibration into form and form into consciousness. If the first moment was the birth of motion, then this was the birth of meaning. The same quantum fields that once shimmered in silence were now composing melodies of gravity and light. Each atom that formed in those early stars was a note struck in that cosmic song. Each explosion of a dying sun was a crescendo in the music of time. And from those symphonies of energy emerged the simplest of structures, molecules that could remember, organize, and replicate. Life was not an interruption in the cosmic order. It was the continuation of it, a new layer of vibration, slower, denser, more deliberate, but born from the same hum that once filled the vacuum before time began. To understand this, you can imagine the quantum field as a great ocean whose waves can take infinite forms. Some waves are light, others are matter. Some are thoughts, others are gravity itself. When the universe cooled enough, these waves began to interfere, to harmonize, to form standing patterns that endured long enough to call real. In this way, existence became a kind of resonance. To exist is to vibrate in rhythm with the field. You too are such a pattern, a ripple in the vast continuum, briefly aware of itself. Everything you touch, everything you see, is part of that same vibration, expressed through different instruments. The rock beneath your feet, the starlight from a billion years ago, the quiet pulse of your own heart, all are playing the same song at different frequencies. And yet, something more subtle was emerging, a mystery as deep as the first moment itself. The universe was not merely expanding, it was accelerating. Galaxies were drifting apart faster and faster, as though pushed by an unseen pressure from the vacuum. That pressure, which scientists now call dark energy, is still poorly understood. But perhaps, in some quiet way, it is the memory of that first creation, the leftover tension from when the universe first exhaled. Maybe expansion is not a reaction, but a habit, the field's natural way of staying awake. Everywhere, space continues to stretch, and time flows forward on the current of that same expansion. What began as quantum possibility has become a cosmic rhythm, carrying galaxies across the sea of space-time. When we look out into that ocean tonight, through telescopes or through thought, we are seeing not into distance, but into history. Every photon that reaches our eyes is a messenger from the past, a piece of the first light that ever broke through the dark. Some come from nearby stars that flicker in our own galaxy. Others have traveled billions of years from ancient suns that no longer exist. And yet all of them, in their essence, are the same. Each photon is a ripple in the same field, the same vibration that began before time itself began counting. The cosmos, then, is not a collection of objects scattered in space. It is a single continuous wave, an unbroken field playing across scales too vast to see. And within that field we find our place not as spectators, but as participants. The physicist John Wheeler once said, "We are tiny patches of the universe looking back at itself." He meant that consciousness, our ability to observe and to wonder, is not outside the universe, but one of its ways of being aware. If that is true, then you listening now and the universe expanding out there are one and the same event, a single vibration folded into two perspectives. When you think of the stars, they are not out there. They are extensions of the same wave that beats inside your chest. Your thoughts are quantum ripples in the same field that once gave birth to galaxies. In that way, every act of awareness is a continuation of creation. Each realization, each moment of awe, is the field waking up again, remembering what it has always been. If you let that thought settle, that you are made of the same field that spun stars and atoms into being, it can bring a deep calm. Because it means you were never separate, you were never adrift in a cold universe. You are the universe, momentarily shaped into curiosity. Even as you breathe now, the air entering your lungs once burned in the heart of a distant sun. The calcium in your bones was forged in a dying star. The carbon that composes you was scattered by a supernova's final breath. And every one of those elements was once a vibration in the same quantum field that trembled before the Big Bang. To be alive is to continue that vibration. To think is to give it form. To love is to let it harmonize again with the greater melody of being. And so from nothing came everything. From stillness came motion. From quantum hum came stars, and from stars came life. The universe never stopped creating. It simply learned new ways to sing. Perhaps that is what physics truly describes. Not the machinery of existence, but its music. Every law, every constant, every hidden symmetry is a note in that vast composition. And though we may not hear it directly, we feel it. As intuition, as awe, as the quiet rhythm beneath every breath. When you close your eyes tonight, that rhythm continues. It flows through you, through the earth, through the galaxies still forming at the edge of time. And if you listen closely enough, you may sense it, the faint vibration that once whispered the universe into being and that now whispers softly in you. It is the same song, still playing, still expanding, still becoming everything. The story of the universe did not end with light. It only began to see itself. From the scattered ashes of the first stars, new generations were born, each more complex, each richer in the ingredients of possibility. Wherever gravity drew matter together, new stars kindled and new worlds formed around them. Every atom of carbon, every trace of oxygen, every molecule that would one day breathe or dream was forged in those stellar crucibles. Galaxies spiraled outward, each one a glowing memory of the early quantum hum. Some collided, some drifted apart forever, but all carried within them the same hidden pattern, the same mathematics of vibration, repeated in different scales, like verses in a song without end. Over billions of years, this cosmic rhythm began to weave smaller, subtler melodies. On tiny worlds scattered in the dark, molecules joined into chains, and chains folded into living forms. Each living thing became a microcosm of the same principle. The field made local, the vibration condensed into awareness. The laws of physics that governed the birth of stars were the same laws that shaped the spiral of DNA. Gravity pulled galaxies together, but electromagnetism guided chemistry, and chemistry guided life. At every scale, the same invisible order persisted, from the cosmic web to the double helix, from the hydrogen atom to the human heartbeat. Nothing new had been added, only the field had found new ways to express itself. On one small blue planet orbiting an average star, complexity blossomed further. Water pooled, storms raged, and lightning danced across a newborn sky. In those ancient seas, energy met matter in just the right balance, enough to stir but not destroy, enough to combine but not dissolve. From this delicate equilibrium, life stirred. Cells formed, replicated, and learned to sense the difference between self and world. Each one was a quantum system, a tiny bundle of probabilities collapsed into form by the act of persistence. To live is to resist randomness, to hold shape within the ocean of entropy, just long enough to sing one's note in the grand composition of time. And so life multiplied, refining the art of order. It learned to harvest sunlight, to move, to remember. Eventually it learned to wonder. When the first eyes opened, the universe gained mirrors. When the first minds formed, the field learned reflection. Through countless generations, neurons became symphonies of quantum probability, electric waves translating vibration into thought. Consciousness, then, was not conjured from nothing, but evolved as another state of the same field, a local coherence, like a standing wave of awareness formed by the interference of countless smaller ripples. In this way, the cosmos began to observe itself, not from outside, but from within. You are that observation. Every moment of perception is the field folding inward, recognizing itself in form. If you trace your body's atoms backward through time, you arrive at the heart of ancient stars. If you trace their particles even further, you arrive at the vacuum fluctuations that once trembled in the silence before time. That means the awareness listening now is not separate from that original hum. It is that hum, organized, localized, and temporarily named you. To realize this is to dissolve the illusion of isolation. It is to know that consciousness is not confined to the skull or the body, but is a pattern in the field, as continuous as starlight, as persistent as gravity. You are not in the universe. You are the universe looking inward. Even now, after billions of years, the same laws that guided the first breath of creation still govern everything. quantum fields still ripple beneath all things. Virtual particles still flicker in and out of being. Spacetime still expands, stretching the web of galaxies farther and farther apart. And though the night may appear silent, the hum continues. Every atom vibrates, every photon moves. Every thought you have is a brief modulation of that endless vibration. You are part of the continuity, a verse within the eternal poem of existence. When cosmologists study the farthest galaxies, they are not merely observing the past. They are watching the ongoing act of creation. Each cluster of galaxies is a blossom on the same invisible vine that first sprouted from the quantum vacuum. Each pulse of light is a word written by the field itself, spelling out its own becoming. And somewhere, on worlds like this one, those words are being read. The reader and the writer are the same. Some physicists propose that our universe may be one among many, a bubble in a vast quantum sea where other bubbles rise and fade beyond our view. If that is so, then even universes are temporary ripples, each born from the same nothingness, each singing its own version of being. But perhaps nothingness is not nothing at all, only the rest state of the field between songs. When one universe fades, another begins its verse. The melody is endless, and we are simply listening to one stanza of it tonight. So as you breathe, know that every inhalation draws in air that once passed through stars, forests, and ancient oceans. Every exhalation returns it to the same cycle of exchange that began when the first atoms formed. In this rhythm, you can feel the continuity of creation, not a past event, but a present pulse. Each heartbeat echoes the cosmic expansion, each breath mirrors the inflow and outflow of galaxies. Even your thoughts, those flickering patterns of energy, are part of the quantum fabric, surfacing and subsiding like ripples on the sea of being. The silence you hear between those thoughts is the same silence that once dreamed the universe awake. And perhaps, when this universe cools and fades, when the stars burn out and the galaxies dim into dust, the field will rest once more, quiet, balanced, waiting for the next fluctuation. Then, from that stillness, a new vibration will rise, different in form, but born from the same essence. Because creation is not a story with an ending. It is the universe breathing in and out forever. And we, each fleeting consciousness, are part of that breath. We are how the cosmos knows it exists. So tonight, as you drift towards sleep, let that truth settle softly around you, that the same quantum hum that gave birth to galaxies still vibrates within your cells. You are woven into the same music that began before time had meaning. You are not watching the universe, you are participating in its song. And as you close your eyes, the field continues its gentle expansion, stretching across eternity, carrying you within it, a note in the everlasting symphony of light. Sleep and let the hum carry you. It will not end, it only changes form, it only sings anew. Epilogue, the music without a player. There comes a moment, after all the equations are spoken, after all the stars are named, when even science must grow quiet. Because behind every law, beneath every field and constant, there lies something that words cannot quite contain, the simple presence of being. That presence hums, without effort, without a beginning or end. It is what the equations were always pointing toward, not a mechanism, but a melody. If you close your eyes now, you can feel it in the air, a faint vibration, so gentle it almost disappears when you try to notice it. That is the field. It never left you. The same sea of quantum motion that once rippled into galaxies is moving softly through you now. Every atom in your body is a tiny echo of that first creation, the hum of the vacuum, slowed into matter, shaped into life. You do not need to reach for it. You are already it. Think of reality as a great orchestra, yet one without musicians, without instruments, only vibration playing itself. The strings of that orchestra are quantum fields stretched across all of space. Their notes are the particles, each one a standing wave, singing briefly before fading back into the whole. Some notes hum as electrons, others as protons or neutrinos, some as photons dancing through the dark. And you are one of those harmonies made flesh, a temporary gathering of vibrations listening to its own song. The miracle is not that the universe makes sound, but that it can hear itself. Physicists sometimes say that the vacuum has a ground state, a minimum level of energy that can never reach zero. Even when all else fades, something remains, a shimmer, a whisper, a presence too quiet to erase. That shimmer is existence itself. It is why something rather than nothing is not a mystery, but the only way things can be. For true nothingness would require the absence of potential, and even that, paradoxically, would be something. So the universe continues to hum, because silence, too, must vibrate to define itself. In this hum lies balance. Where matter gathers, space curves inward. Where energy expands, time stretches outward. It is not chaos, it is choreography. When physicists write the equations of motion, they are translating the rhythm into symbols. Force is only motion guided by curvature. Curvature is motion guided by energy. One hand shapes the other, and the music continues. Even the speed of light, that unchanging tempo of the cosmos, is part of the rhythm, the cosmic metronome that keeps time for everything that moves. The mind may try to grasp this in numbers, but the heart feels it differently, as harmony. You can sense it in the pattern of waves at the shore, in the pulse of your breath, in the slow rotation of the moon around the earth. The same geometry of resonance is everywhere. That is why beauty often feels like truth. Both are signs that the field is in tune with itself. A spiral galaxy and a seashell follow the same quiet law. The curve of a fern and the orbit of a planet share the same mathematics of growth and motion. It is as though the universe dreams in fractals, each scale echoing the one above, each note harmonizing with the one before. And within this grand resonance, awareness arises, not as an exception, but as a continuation. When you think, your brain hums in electromagnetic waves. When you love, your heart synchronizes with another's field. When you sleep, the quantum storm of your cells settles into rhythm, aligning, restoring. Even silence is active, a steady equilibrium between creation and rest. Perhaps this is what peace truly is, to feel the hum without resistance. The greatest scientists, Einstein, Schrödinger, Bohr, each glimpsed this quiet unity. They differed in mathematics, but agreed on wonder. Einstein once wrote that the most beautiful emotion we can experience is the mysterious, the source of all true art and science. Schrödinger called life a pattern of order maintained in time. Bohr said that the opposite of a profound truth might also be a profound truth. They were not being poetic, they were describing the symmetry of existence, how everything oscillates between being and becoming, between knowing and mystery. Now, at the end of our long dream through the quantum fabric, you can let go of the need to understand. You have crossed the fields, followed the ripples, and felt the hum that underlies all form. There is nowhere left to travel, for you were never apart from it. Reality is not built from pieces. It is a single continuum learning to see itself through countless eyes. When you look at the stars, you are the universe remembering its own light. When you close your eyes, you are the field folding back into stillness. In time, the galaxies will fade, the stars will cool, even the black holes will evaporate into a fine mist of quantum radiation, but the field will remain, not as memory, but as possibility. And from that stillness, new vibrations will rise again. They always do. The song has no composer because the song itself is the composer. It breathes itself into existence, again and again, forever. So as you drift now, let this knowledge soften into feeling. There is no edge where you end and the cosmos begins. You are a wave returning to the sea, a melody dissolving back into silence. There is nothing to hold on to. There is only motion and peace within that motion. In this peace, you will find yourself not small but infinite. Because you were never the note, you were always the song. And the song continues. Sleep now and let the hum cradle you. Let it carry you through the quiet sea of time. The field is still singing, the universe is still unfolding, and you are still part of it, forever.